Welcome to One Great Elevator Kiss, written by Lucy McConnell, read by an AI-generated voice named Ava. Chapter 1. Iris. 5:11 p.m. I checked the clock for the sixth time since 5:01 p.m. and groaned. This conference call was going to be the death of me. Yes, Mr. Morris. I spoke loudly because the man on the other end kept telling me we had a bad connection. Since we were on a landline, I was pretty sure the problem was his cell. We can ensure a smooth transition from your old program to our newer one. I took a breath, hoping my frazzled state of mind and urgency to leave the office didn't come across to the client. As a consulting firm specializing in IT solutions for higher education, we valued our relationships with our clients above all else. Well, we were supposed to. But I had a hot date with my elevator boyfriend, and I didn't want to miss it. I cast a pleading look across the table at my best friend and coworker on this project, Zelda. She hit the mute button on the call. Go. You're going to miss him. She flung her hand toward the door and grinned. I wilted with relief. I might have already missed the man of my dreams, but I had to try to see him. Somehow, we ended up on the same elevator out of the building every workday. I didn't know how it happened like that, but I didn't want to stand him up. What would he think of me if I suddenly didn't show? Probably nothing. I shook off the thoughts laced with doubt. What we had might not extend past the 4 elevator walls, but it was definitely something. Our innocent flirting didn't include personal information of any kind. I didn't even know his name. What I did know about him was that he was drop-dead gorgeous, wore expensive suits and shoes, and had a playful side that only came out when we were alone in the elevator. I mouthed the words thank you as I gathered up my notebook, laptop, and bag. Zelda hit the unmute button, and I jumped in to excuse myself using my professional voice. Mr. Morris, I'm going to turn you over to Zelda for a moment. She has a handle on all the specs and is your specialist with her fingers deep in code. I blew Zelda a kiss on my way out of the conference room. Maybe it was silly to worry about seeing a guy for less than 2 minutes a day, but he was my only romance. I didn't have a boyfriend. I didn't even have a man who was a friend right now. My life consisted of work, yoga, and hanging with a group of girls from the apartment building where I shared an impossibly tiny space with Zelda. I hit the elevator button, ready to pretend I forgot something at my desk if the doors slid open and he wasn't there. One night, I'd gone through 5 elevator calls before I'd gotten the right one. I should win an Emmy for my acting skills that day. When his gorgeous face appeared, I'd walked onto the elevator with a happy surprised look, like it was just a coincidence that we'd met up. Zelda used to think I was desperate for male attention until she saw the guy. Now she was a firm supporter of my mission to hit the elevator between 5:10 and 5:16 every day. I mean, the man had a jaw sculpted by Da Vinci. Not to mention, he filled out a suit like a Greek god come to visit us mortals. And his brown, wavy hair, it made a girl want to run her fingers through it until the wee hours of the night. The best part of this whole thing was that we were strangers. I could dream about him being an Olympic swimmer, a cowboy on horseback riding in to save me, or a Hollywood heartthrob here to sweep me off my feet, and nothing he said contradicted my daydreams. The doors whooshed open, and my elevator boyfriend lifted his gaze from his phone and broke into a smile. Hello, love. Did I mention he had an English accent? Because, yeah, there's that too. My knees buckled, and I stumbled forward. I'd give all the gelato in New York City to hear him call me love. Hey, handsome, I replied as I walked in and stood next to him. He smelled of aftershave and leather and wind. I didn't know how he managed that combination. It was intoxicating. He tucked his phone into his inside pocket. That was another thing I liked about him. When we were together, he focused on me. How was your day? I asked to get the ball rolling. Better, now that I get to see your gorgeous face. I blushed and tucked a piece of hair behind my ear. The door slowly slid shut, and I thanked the elevator gods for the aged machinery that made others curse. My phone rang, and I glanced at the screen, frowning. Oh, trouble? He touched my arm, ready to offer assistance or sweep in to save the day. I flashed him the screen. It's my mom. I had no secrets from him. Well, except for my name, address, cell number. You'd better answer for your mom. He nodded once, like it was gospel, and he was adding an amen to the sermon. I groaned out loud. Of all the rotten times for her to call, it had to be while I was in my happy place. "I'll be quick," I told him. "Hi, Mom. Honey, I want to set you up with my doorman." I rolled my eyes. My companion snickered, which meant that he could hear everything she said. I poked him in the shoulder for laughing at me. It wasn't my fault my mom had this thing with finding me a boyfriend. I didn't get it. She was single too. Her time would have been well spent looking for a man of her own. Instead, she focused all that pent-up energy on me. "That's great, Mom, but I'm sort of seeing someone right now." I lifted an eyebrow in challenge to see if my liftmate would join in the fun. Mr. Successful pointed to his chest, a look of awe on his face. I nodded even as my mom asked who I was dating. "Just this guy I met. He works in my building." Handsome winked and slipped his arm around my back, resting his hand on my hip. Every nerve in my body tingled, and I leaned into him for support. Trust me, I needed it. The closer we got, the more his body heat melted me. I had no idea my bones could turn to rubber. "I want to hear all about him," Mom announced. It was my companion's turn to lift an eyebrow in challenge. Challenge accepted. He's tall, medium brown hair with a natural wave. But it's his bedroom eyes that get me every time. The smolder that followed that statement sucked all the air out of our small space. I fanned my face dramatically to try to cover the fact that I was blushing so hard that moisture gathered on the back of my neck. This man was more than I could handle. If we ever actually tried to date, I'd be in way over my head. "I want to meet him," Mom said, her voice loud in my ear. I glanced quickly at my crush and then looked away again. Meeting the mother would violate the terms of our pretend relationship agreement. "You can't. We haven't been seeing each other that long." He held up 5 fingers. I bit my lip, amazed that he'd kept track. I mean, I'd kept track, but I hadn't known these stolen moments together meant so much to him. "Just 5 months," I said into the phone. "Not long enough to meet the parents." His mouth fell open as he feigned offense. He leaned in and whispered into the ear without the phone. "I would be chuffed to meet your mom." His breath was warm and minty and made me want to crawl inside his jacket and live there. I pulled the phone down to my side and whispered back, "Trust me, I'm doing you a favor." "Are you together now?" asked Mom. I whipped the phone back up, doing my best to keep up on 2 conversations. The thing was, the more time I spent in Handsome's arms, the more right it felt. Like when I found the mascara that actually made my lashes look longer and thicker. Or when I picked up the gold pendant necklace that went with all my tops, only it was those feelings times a billion. "Yeah, we're headed to the lobby." "Perfect. I came to take you out to dinner, so we can pretend it's a happy surprise." "Wait. You're here." I grabbed onto that expensive navy suit. The fabric was thick and soft as butter under my fingertips. My eyes grew wide with panic, and I stared up at the numbers over the door as they counted down. My phone beeped off because Mom hung up. I swallowed and chanced a look into his beautiful gray eyes. "I just told my mother we are dating." His hand settled on my lower back, and he turned me to face him instead of the door. "It's about time we told people, don't you think?" I smacked his chest. "This is no time to joke. My mom is going to know I lied to get out of dating her doorman." I just lied to my mom. I wasn't a saint by any means, but my mom had this thing about honesty. Maybe it came from living with my dad, who had a thing with lying, but the truth was a big deal to her. I'd only told her about Handsome because, well, I was flirting. The numbers continued to count down. 3, 2, save me. I begged my elevator boyfriend. "I've got you, love." He tugged me closer. Just as a happy ding rang through the air, indicating we'd reached ground level, he closed his lips over mine. I wish I could say that I wasn't sure how to react, that I was taken off guard and stood stiffly in this stranger's arms because kissing men I didn't know wasn't my thing. But that was not happened. What happened was this. My lungs breathed out a sigh, one that said I'd been waiting for this moment for 5 months. My curves fit up against his firm shape like 2 koala bears cuddling together. As he deepened the kiss, nipping at my lower lip and then sweetly tasting my mouth, I felt more than just the lightheadedness of kissing a hot guy. I felt a connection that went all the way back through time to the creation of my soul. Time stopped, like the universe paused to watch this very important event happen in history. There was no sound except the thrumming of our hearts as they fell in sync. There was no light except the fireworks going off behind my eyelids. And there was no temperature except the heat pooling in my lower belly and the warm tendrils wafting off of him and caressing my body. It changed me. I was no longer Iris Hartley, single woman and account manager. I was half of this, though I didn't have a word to explain what this was. I was kissing the human created just for me. The best term I could come up with was soulmates. Beyond the connection was this sense of love, deep and abiding, the kind that partnered with God to create life. The kind of love that sustained a person through the worst life threw at them. The kind that reorganized priorities and made you pick out a china pattern. I'd found him. And I didn't even know his name. Ahem. I brought my head out of stars and space and back to the elevator in the International Paper Building, where my mother held open the doors so they didn't slide shut and take me and lover boy back up to the 37th floor. I stared into his eyes, unable to pull myself away from his gaze. He'd felt it too. There was no denying the awe coupled with surprise written across his beautiful face. He wasn't expecting me to be his everything, just like I wasn't expecting him to be my all. Yet here we were. Are you going to get off the elevator, or do I need to get on with you? Mom groused. I guess that as much as she wanted me to have a boyfriend, she didn't want me to kiss him. Or she didn't want to witness me kissing him. Heh. I reluctantly stepped out of the strongest pair of arms I'd ever been in and moved into the lobby. You must be the new guy. Mom thrust out her hand for introductions, still using her mother bear glower to intimidate us. I wanted to hide behind the fake potted plant. New guy was not the right term. The guy was more like it. I opened my mouth to correct her and then shut it quick before I said something that ruined the moment. I prefer the term luckiest man on earth, he replied as he took her hand, turned it over, and kissed the back. Pairing that move with his accent pretty much guaranteed him a place in Mom's heart for eternity. She fluttered her hand over her chest and bobbed a little curtsy. So much for her mother bear. I would have given her a hard time, but I was just as Twitter-pated as her. He continued as if being caught kissing happened every day of the week. It didn't. I wished it did. It's wonderful to meet you, Mom, but I've got to dash. You ladies have a brilliant evening together. He flashed his stunning smile and headed out the front doors. I watched him leave, my heart following as if it had wings. Chasing after him was a bad idea, right? My feet moved as if trying to get the rest of me back to him. They were just as in love as my head and my heart. We were all struggling with separation anxiety as his broad shoulders cleared the doorway. Mom hooked her arm through mine and spun me toward the doors on the opposite side, breaking the visual connection, which allowed me to gather myself some. You hang on to that man, do you hear me? He's a keeper. Yeah, I breathed, unable to form a whole thought in that moment. That kiss was the end-all to any other kiss in my life. I would die before I'd let another set of lips near mine. There was no point. I'd had the ultimate version, and nothing else would compare. Come on. Let's eat in the bistro on the side street, and you can tell me all about your new beau. Beau? I asked. You've never used that word in your life. She laughed. It must be his accent. I fanned my neck. Tell me about it. And I had a whole 24 hours to go before I'd see him again. Like a blow-up holiday yard decoration the day after Christmas, I deflated. It felt like the colors seeped out of the world too. Being apart was wrong. I hoped he felt it, this sense that the world only existed to bring the two of us together. I want to hear all about how you met and how long until I get half-British grandchildren. We aren't even close to talking about kids, Mom. That kiss blurred lines. I'd found my soulmate, but we hadn't had a chance to exchange phone numbers. I had no claim on him. Not officially, anyway. I'd figure it out. Tomorrow evening, in the elevator. We had to talk about the kiss. Would it be awkward? Probably. I could do awkward. We'd spent 5 months dancing around each other and flirting. It was time for one of us to take things to the next level. That normally meant going for coffee, but I was fine skipping that and getting right to kissing again. I needed his name, though. I couldn't keep making up nicknames for him. Although he could call me Love for the rest of my life, and I wouldn't care. I'd ask him out. The decision was like a bucket of cold water dumped over my head. What if he turned me down? If he turned me down, then the kiss didn't mean as much to him as it had to me, which meant that he was a master kisser, and like I'd suspected all along, he was way more man than I could handle, and I needed to walk away before he stampeded my heart. I hoped that wasn't the case, though, because I'd sure like to see what happened after a kiss like that. Chapter 2. Reggie. What a kiss. While I'd looked forward to my meeting with the hot little number from floor 37 every night, I hadn't had plans to take it outside the elevator, ever. I wasn't in the market for a relationship, and our 3 minutes of hormone-induced tête-à-tête was enough to hold me over. My little business had boomed. Between our 3 international offices running me ragged, I would die an old codger with a bloodhound at the foot of my rocker if I didn't get out soon. I shivered at the image because I looked exactly like my father. That wasn't a compliment. I'd intended on asking her for coffee today, like a normal bloke. However, when an opportunity presented itself to test the waters of our attraction with a kiss, I jumped on it. I jumped, and I still felt like I was falling. Not the scary kind of fall where you land on the floor in the middle of the night jolting awake and feeling for broken bones, but the wonderful kind of jumping out of an airplane and seeing the whole world spread out in front of you. That's what it was like, flying through space where time didn't exist and there was only that moment and that girl in my arms. What should have been a simple kiss knocked me off my axis. The woman intrigued me, but I had no idea a simple attraction could blossom with such force when given the proper nutrients. To say I was encouraged by that kiss would be like saying New York was busy, an understatement of gargantuan proportions. I'd stuck to my part of the pretend boyfriend in front of her mum, but it had taken all my strength to walk out of there without getting her name or number. My one consolation was that I knew exactly where to find her 5 days a week. We never missed an elevator date. I'd had to get off at the floor below hers and take the stairs to the one above hers to get on the elevator 3 times today, but holding her more than made up for the effort. I stopped at the intersection and waited for the light to turn. Closing my eyes, I blocked out the horns, the roar of 100 motors, and the sound of 1,000 footsteps, and I was back in the elevator, holding a woman who was as soft as velvet, smelled like cookies and copy paper, and tasted like peppermint. The crosswalk dinged, and I stepped into traffic, my head still in the clouds and my vision full of her light blue eyes. A cab slammed into my legs, flipping me up onto its hood. I observed the way buildings turned upside down. My ears seemed to turn off. The windshield cracked beneath my head, absorbing some of the force of my blow. I stared up at the overcast sky, thinking it might just rain today after all. And then I didn't think anything at all, and the world went dark. Chapter 3. 1 month later. Reggie. Mr. Piper, a female voice called out to me. I struggled to lift my lids, but they were so heavy. Was there something on my face? I told my hand to brush my eyes, but it lay on the bed. Twitching was as close as it came to following my silent command. Nothing seemed to work right. I opened my mouth and tasted sour plastic. I didn't have enough saliva to speak. Something thin and cold touched my lips. I tried to pull away. The same soft voice said, "It's water. Drink. It'll help." I did as she told me to, and cold hit the back of my throat, burning in the best way as my body soaked up the liquid. When I heard the gurgle that meant the cup was empty, I released the straw and rasped, "Thanks." My eyes fluttered open, and I took in my surroundings. I was in a hospital room, the lights so dim it was hard to make out basic shapes. What happened? I croaked. You were hit by a vehicle. I don't remember that. I didn't. I reached into my brain, looking for footage of any kind, and came up empty. My head was a black void. I gripped the blankets in my fists. I don't remember anything. The room was too dark for me to make out much. Beeps and a soft glow from the computer on a tall stand were all I had. The situation seemed dodgy at best and absolutely terrifying at worst. I was leaning toward the worst. Now. The nurse patted my hand. It's going to be all right. I grabbed onto her and pulled her down so her face was close to mine. The strength it took to make that happen was fueled by fear. You don't understand. I don't remember anything. She nodded. You sustained a head injury. It's not uncommon to have some memory loss for a short time. It's going to be okay. Can you tell me your name? I opened my mouth, but nothing transferred down the wire that connected my brain and my tongue. You said it was Piper. She smiled, her teeth eerily white in the darkness. Easing away from me, she said, "That's right. How about your first name?" I blinked as if doing so hit a reset button. No, I was back to panicking and wanting to hold the nurse here because she knew more about me than I did. Her hand was a lifeline I couldn't let go of. "Your file says you're Reginald Piper the Sixth." The sixth? I repeated back to her. "That means I have a family." She nodded but scooted her gaze off to the side. "I don't have a family?" I asked. How did one become a sixth in line but not come from people? I needed my people. I looked past her to the shadows where someone should have been waiting for me to wake up. "We've been unable to locate your family, and there isn't an emergency contact listed on your health insurance forms." I let her go and settled my head back on the papery pillow. A vision of a dark-haired angel with light blue eyes filled my head. "There's a woman." I concentrated on her, trying to bring out more details. She had a beautifully bowed set of lips, like a supermodel's, and olive skin. Her hip fit into the palm of my hand, and she tasted like peppermint. I'd kissed her. Not just any kiss, but the kind of kiss that was exchanged between two people madly in love. I remember saving her from some kind of danger, and she kissed me. I knew her, though. We were close. The feelings from the kiss flooded my being, and I held on to them. She loves me. I'm sure of it. The nurse patted my knee and smiled. "I'll call her. Do you have her number?" I stretched behind that memory, looking for more information, but there wasn't any. I barely shook my head, afraid that if I moved too much, I'd lose what little I had. "I don't know. It's okay. It will come back soon. Let's get your vitals, and then you can rest. You'll need to be in the dark room for a few days while we assess your brain's recovery. After that, I can bring in your cell phone and you can give her a call." "Okay." She's probably worried. I'm sure she is. I allowed the nurse to check my blood pressure and adjust the leg massagers that kept blood moving through my body. The whole time, I concentrated on the memory of my love. The nurse was right. Everything was going to be okay. With a love like that in my life, I could get through this. Chapter 4. 2 months later. Iris. I stepped forward in the soup line that snaked up the sidewalk and to the food truck that served the best cheesy creamy potato in the Big Apple. From back here, I couldn't see the order window. My mouth salivated just the same. The soup got better every time. The only reason Zelda agreed to stand in the line in the first place was that it moved with military precision. People moved through the line with efficiency. If you didn't know how the process worked, you got out of the way. I patted my pocket to make sure my $9, no change needed, was still in my pocket. Every time we're here, I'm afraid someone's going to yell, "No soup for you," and kick me out of line. Zelda chuckled as she unbuttoned her impractical lime green pea coat. She'd paid a fortune for the thing and had worn it constantly for the last month. The crazy thing was, it didn't match anything she owned, but it went with every outfit. However, the weather was changing and with it came the need to shed layers. I followed her example, grateful for the gust of warm air that hit my neck. Summer was knocking on the door. "I doubt anyone remembers that episode," she responded. "Are you kidding?" The guy in front of us whipped around. "It's a classic." He dipped his chin and faced forward, exiting our conversation as quickly as he jumped into it. I stifled my giggles as Zelda covered her laugh with a cough. Giving the guy a once-over, I decided he was too old for either of us. Zelda bumped me with her elbow. "Caught you looking," she whispered. "He could have been my soup boyfriend," I joked back just as quietly. Zelda sighed and shook her head sadly. "Maybe you should look for a man who has an actual name." I grimaced. Too much work. Looking around the interrupting man in front of us, Zelda tried to sound casual. "It's too bad elevator boyfriend disappeared." I fought the urge to throw my hands over my ears and yell la 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 at the top of my lungs to drown her out. "I don't want to talk about him. But you said he was your soulmate." She tried to lock eyes with me, but I avoided her. She was right. I'd come home after gushing to my mom about how wonderful Handsome was, only to gush to Zelda about the most spectacular kiss in the history of kissing. I'd spent hours reliving that moment, and then more time the next day getting ready to see him again. Only he didn't show up that night for our elevator date. Or the next. Or the one after that. I tucked my arms around me. I probably scared him off. How? She demanded, jabbing her hand into her hip. She'd stopped asking me if I'd seen him on day 3, because at that point it had been obvious he was ghosting me. We scooted up in line, careful to keep the proper distance between us and the guy. I took a deep breath. It was time I talked about what had happened and processed my feelings. Holding my breath for 2 months, hoping he'd show up with an explanation, wasn't helping me move on, and it wasn't healthy. I shouldn't cry myself to sleep over someone I'd briefly known. It wasn't normal. Men run at the first sign of commitment, and I had the word written right here. I swiped my fingers across my forehead for emphasis. The Seinfeld fan in front of us inched away. I smirked at his back. That's right, big guy, run away. I want a real man who can be a husband and a father and stay true our whole lives through. I glared, feeling like I could curse him with my thoughts. Maybe he got fired that day, and that's why he finally had the guts to kiss you. Zelda adjusted her coat over her arm so she had better access to her purse. We were close enough we could see the order window now. If that was the case, then why hasn't he come back since? I prodded. It's not like he doesn't know how to find me. He doesn't have a job. She spoke as if it were an actual fact and not a made-up rationale to save my ego. He's probably embarrassed and most likely homeless. I rolled my eyes even as I smiled at her. Bless you for being a loyal friend. It's a good thing too, because we're going to be stuck living in that shoebox together for the rest of our lives. I leaned around the commitment phobe in front of us to look at the front of the line. A man with medium brown wavy hair took his order and turned around. I blinked. No way. Ducking behind the line, I tried to breathe as my heart started beating with excitement. This was not happening. The vision was a figment of my imagination brought on by the fact that I'd finally opened myself up to getting over my elevator boyfriend. What? Zelda leaned out. Her eyes grew wide, and I knew she saw what I saw. It's him, she hissed back at me, not taking her eyes off my ex-fake boyfriend. I know, I shot back. Tugging on her arm, I tried to pull her out of his line of sight. He's coming this way, she practically squealed. Hide me. I ducked even lower, putting my hand in front of my face. No way. Hey. She waved the arm that was on the edge of the line. You need this. I peeked over the shoulder of the guy in front of us to see my British non-lover point at his chest. Yes, you come here. Zelda motioned for him to come closer. I'm kicking you out of the apartment, I growled as I did my best to straighten up and look smart. You can try, she countered. I willed time to stop so I could freshen my lipstick and fluff my beach waves, but it ticked by at a record pace. There was no stopping this. Talking to him was happening, and I was a tongue-tied idiot who wanted to throw herself into his arms. Ack. What was wrong with me? I should hate his guts, not adore the way he held his cup of soup as if it were worth $1,000,000. He got closer, and I traced the lines of his face, his body. My mouth fell open. Instead of his tailored suits, he was dressed in designer jeans and a button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Dang, his forearms were corded and manly. I stared at his hands, remembering how big they'd been when splayed across my back, how protective they'd been when I'd needed them to be, and how soft they'd been as they'd caressed my cheeks during that kiss. I melted at the memory. Do I know you? He asked Zelda. Kill me now. Not only had he ghosted me, he was going to pretend we'd never met. That was arsenic icing on the breakup cake. Why did he have to sound so sexy? Not really, Zelda offered. But I think you've met my best friend. She motioned to me, and his eyes moved off of her to take me in. Oh sure, when things got awkward and weird, time decided to slow down. I shuffled my feet and my arms like they were an extra set of handlebars for a bike that no one knew what to do with. His sharp gray eyes dilated as he drank in my face, my hair, and my body. There was a spark and recognition that quickly flamed into desire. I was a tall, lean glass of water, and he was parched. My cheeks heated under his gaze, and I couldn't stop staring back. The line that had once pinched between his eyebrows was gone. He was thicker in the chest, filled out in all the right places. It's you. He shoved his lunch at Zelda and reached for me. I should have held out for more than it's you, but my body had been crying for this man for over 2 months. Being in his arms, crushed to his chest, was a relief. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He ran his hand down my hair and then put his nose next to my skin and breathed in. Love, you smell delectable. It's perfume, I said like an idiot. He chuckled, still holding me so close I couldn't look into his eyes. You must hate me. I glanced at Zelda, who held his lunch to her like it was a puppy she was caring for. She grinned, nodding for me to answer him. I managed to push back enough to tip my head up and meet his gaze. I've got a lot of questions. Like, what's your name? And where have you been for the last 2 months? I know. I can answer them. Well, some of them. He glanced around. This isn't the time or place I imagined this happening. Today of all days. He cupped my cheeks and then pressed a kiss to my forehead. I've been praying I'd find you. Stunned that he'd said that when he knew darn well where I was every workday between 5 o'clock and 5:15, not to mention which floor I worked on, the truth spilled out of me. I thought you didn't want me. No. His quick reply was so earnest I didn't know quite what to do with it. He kissed my cheek and then lingered his lips on my forehead again. I'm dreaming, I mouthed to Zelda. The world had righted itself once again. I just couldn't make sense of it. 2 months of nothing and then this. Zelda shook her head, and I knew she was going to pinch me the moment she had a chance. Good. I needed a wake-up call. You don't have any reason to trust me, not after I disappeared the way I did. But please, meet me for dinner tonight. His voice was full of longing. I hesitated. 2 months ago, I'd been sure this was my guy, but he didn't act like the guy I'd flirted with for 5 months before that. In the suit and tie, he'd been suave, together, too much for me. In jeans, he was animated in a way that I'd only seen glimpses of before. Zelda shoved me from behind. Say yes. Yes, I blurted before I realized what I'd agreed to. Dinner. With handsome. Food and an explanation. What more could a girl want? His face brightened into a brilliant smile. My knees sagged, and I let out an embarrassing whimper. I was so gone over this guy. He glanced over the top of me and said, thanks to Zelda. I'm her best friend. Zelda. She held out her hand. He shook it, keeping one hand on my side like he couldn't bear to break contact. Reggie. Reggie, I repeated in my head. My ex-elevator crush finally had a name. Well, Reggie, here's your lunch, and it's our turn to order. I'll make sure she meets you at. She handed over his white sack. Thank goodness someone here had a brain, because mine was spinning. Reggie was here. Reggie had asked me out. He'd said he wanted me. I glanced down to see if there was a wormhole I'd stepped through. This was New York, after all. Anything could happen here. There's not a wormhole, Zelda said out of the side of her mouth. Reggie laughed, as if he were embarrassed that he didn't know where to take me for dinner. He ran his hand through his hair. I recognized that move. It was one of my favorites. How about that place right there? He pointed to the restaurant behind us. Charlie's? I asked, dumbfounded. I had one dress that would get me through that door and not enough money in my bank account to get me a soft drink, let alone a meal. The chef had his own television show where he tormented everyone, including food critics, and it was impossible to get it. Sure. I'll make a reservation right now. He stopped to touch my hand as if making sure I was real. I'll see you at 7? Yeah, I replied, my body humming from his touch. He nodded to Zelda before striding into Charlie's like a man on a mission. I turned to Zelda, my mouth hanging open. She reached over and pinched my arm. Pain shot all the way down to my fingers. Ow, that hurt. Hurt so good, he's for real. She stepped up to the window. 2 cheesy creamy potatoes, please. I can't eat. I'm too excited. She paid, and I hugged myself, so happy I could have skipped back to work. Reggie. The name was informal for a guy who wore cashmere like he'd been swaddled in it at birth. I'm just glad he's not homeless. She handed me a sack, the soup cup heavy inside. I don't think I'd care if he was. The world was once again vibrant. Birds chirped, maybe those were crosswalk signals, but they sounded like birds today. What do you think his excuse will be for disappearing? Zelda asked as we stepped away from the window. It was time to clear out or be trampled. I lifted a shoulder. Breaking up with a girlfriend? Or a wife, she added. I made a face. Ugh. I hope not. I don't want to think I had anything to do with breaking up a marriage. Zelda opened her bag, breathing in the delicious aroma and closing her eyes in pleasure. I'm sure it's something harmless. Like he was called overseas or home to settle his father's estate or something. I chewed my lip. Maybe. I really didn't like the idea of a wife. I thought back to all the times I had checked his ring finger and found it bare. Surely he hadn't been married. I cast the thought away like a breadcrumb. I can't get over how familiar he was with me. Holding, touching, kissing. It's like he thought we were a couple. Yeah, that was kind of weird. Wonderful weird. Is it strange that I liked it? Nope. She grinned. Drink it up, girlfriend. Today is your lucky day. She lifted her lunch bag in a toast, and I tapped mine against hers. She was right. Fate had brought us back together, and obviously Reggie was happy about it. Relieved was more like it. No analyzing, no guessing where he's been. I'm going in with zero expectations. That's right. Don't jinx it. Right. I turned my head and pretended to spit like my Italian great-grandma used to when warding off a curse or evil spirit. I'm not getting my hopes up either. I'm just going to ride this out and see what he has to say. And I'll stop at the cathedral and light a candle for you. I sagged with relief. You're the best. No matter what I said, I couldn't keep my hopes from rising to the heavens if I tried. I wanted this to work out. I wanted Reggie for my very own. I couldn't quite believe that he wanted it too. There was no denying the happiness on his face at seeing me, the sheer joy. I hurried ahead, wishing I could speed up time and get to tonight faster. Reggie acted like he wanted to pick up where we'd left off, and I was all for it. Chapter 5. Reggie. Amnesia. Iris said the word too loudly in the quiet restaurant, and heads swiveled our direction. When I told her to meet me here, I hadn't realized it was the kind of place where I had to wear a tie and know a senator to get a reservation. The host had been snobby and rude until I'd pulled out my credit card. Sleek and black, it didn't have any numbers on it, and I knew enough about the world to know a card like that didn't have a credit limit. Apparently, the host knew it too, because he'd given me the reservation I'd asked for without any further guff. I glanced around and dropped my eyes to the white linen tablecloth. I didn't care what these people thought of Iris for talking loudly, but I didn't want to broadcast the fact that my brain was broken. Yes, I'm so sorry. My doctors had told me not to apologize for my condition, but I knew I'd hurt the woman I loved, and I wanted to make it right. I'd had to ask for her name, which was embarrassing enough, but I'd followed that up with the full story before our drinks arrived. The only thing I remember is our last kiss. It was some kiss, she said, fidgeting with her napkin. The other diners went back to their meals, silverware tinkling softly. Outside the tinted windows, the city lights were muted and dull, giving the crystal goblets and light fixtures center stage. Jewels were popular accessories for women and men. Gold watches flashed out from under suit sleeves. I adored the pulse of the big city, but was more comfortable with the business suits during a lunch rush than the formal attire currently surrounding me. I chose to focus on Iris. She was the reason I came to this place, and I wouldn't leave without her understanding that I didn't abandon her on purpose. It was. And even with I touched the side of my head. Injury, I remembered the love we shared in that moment. It's what got me through all the horrible days of darkness in the hospital, the rehab, and the counseling. I'm actually still in counseling. Her mouth fell open. Blimey, why did I tell her that? I reached for her hand, and she let me take it. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm so thankful I have you in my life. I'm sure you were scared and hurt that I disappeared, but I'm back now, and I'd like to make it all up to you. She leaned forward. I'm afraid you. I held up a hand to cut her off. You don't have to be afraid to trust me. I've talked this over with the counselor, and he said you would probably have some trauma over losing me and may have even mourned me as if I died. She nodded mutely. A myriad of emotions played across her face so quickly it was hard to keep up with them all. It's natural. I traced my thumb over the back of her hand, and she shivered. There was proof that she wasn't immune to me, that her body still wanted mine as much as I wanted hers even if she was fighting against it. One thing at a time, I admonished myself before continuing on. I'd practiced this speech more times than I could count. If you give me a chance, I'll prove to you that I'm the kind of guy who sticks around. We can work through all this together. So you want us to be a thing? She said dubiously. I captured her gaze and held it, trying desperately to convey all the love and hope that burned in my chest. I want to be your everything. She gasped, leaning back in her chair as if I'd read the words from her mind or something. Maybe I'd said them to her long ago, and this was some kind of sign that our relationship wasn't a big blank to me. I let her hand go, not wanting to trap her into this. I wanted her to choose me. As often as I'd practiced the speech to win her back, I'd imagined her walking away from me. The counselor had said I had to give her enough space to make up her mind. He'd also said, "Blimey, there's someone else, isn't there?" I blurted. It was a possibility that I hadn't been willing to consider. You didn't get over a love like we shared. She couldn't have moved on. She jerked, shaking her head. No. I grinned. Take that, Dr. Jackson. Iris and I had it, that elusive love every person on the planet craved. Because you know that what we have, well, had, but I hope to have again, was special. Iris chewed her bottom lip. My lower belly warmed with desire at the sight. I thought you were my soulmate, she confessed. I looked up to heaven and mouthed thank you to God. There were steps to take, easing her back into this would take time. I know we can't pick up where we left off. You want to bet? She muttered behind her water glass before taking a sip. I took it as a good sign, but I wasn't going to press my luck. Let's date again. I brushed my fingers over her arm. The truth is, now that I've found you, I can't stand the thought of losing you again. A warning light marked desperation went off in my head, and I tried to pull back, but there was no stopping the words that were written in my heart from tumbling forth. I was a bloomin' idiot for this woman, and she might as well know it. I need you right now, Iris. Saying her name was like saying it for the first time. Her forehead wrinkled. I'd like to be there for you, but I don't know what to do. I need help figuring out who I was before all this happened. She sipped her water, her face flushed. I'd thrown a lot at her and asked for a commitment in return. This wasn't how I'd planned our reunion. To be honest, I'd pictured her throwing herself into my arms. That hadn't happened, but she hadn't shoved me out of her life and told me to get lost. I'm not sure how much help I'll be, she hedged. I wanted lessons on how to act like me. At first, I hadn't been able to shower without questioning if I usually started by washing my hair or soaping my feet. Simple things like putting my shoes on became an experiment to see if the left shoe or right shoe went first. Just walk with me through this journey. If, when I get my memory back, you can decide if you want to stay together. What about your family? I fell back in my seat. That was a great mystery that I couldn't solve. I can't find them. Her eyes about popped out of her head. I'm so sorry. I laughed. Don't worry. It's confusing, but it doesn't hurt my feelings. I don't have warm, fuzzy memories, or horrible ones either. All I really feel is lost. Except now that we're together, I don't feel so isolated. You've given me hope. She gulped. Okay, I'll help. A sense that a great wrong had righted itself overcame me, and I picked up her hand, kissing the back of it. I had a sense of déjà vu. It wasn't a full memory, but it was the closest I'd come to one. Thank you, love. Iris smiled softly. You used to call me that. All the time. I grinned. It just came out. With her, everything was easier. The server appeared with our entrees, and I was suddenly famished. I want to hear everything about you. I scooted my foot under the table so our shoes touched. I had to make sure she was real. My dream girl sat across from me. Don't leave anything out. She smiled, unsure. Only if you do the same. I nodded. I'll tell you everything I know about myself, which pretty much comes from my driver's license and my medical records. I waved my fork and then pointed it at her. She finished chewing a bite of food. I grew up in Massachusetts, and I don't have an accent. I laughed. Oh, but you do, love. It's positively melodic. Her cheeks dusted pink, and my heart warmed. This was what I'd been missing. My other half. It didn't matter if it took 10 years. I was going to win her heart back. Chapter 6. Iris. You didn't tell him. I shushed Zelda and flapped my hands at her to get her to lower her voice. What was I supposed to say to him after he pretty much told me I was his reason for living? You want me to rip that away from him? I sagged against my desk. It would have broken the man. Not just his heart, his whole self. I didn't know what to say. The look in Reggie's eyes was so full of adoration and hope that it cut right through all my walls, defenses, and better sense. I couldn't believe he thought we were a couple, that I, loved him. I mean, that was one incredible kiss, but to stand out so strong that it was the only thing he remembered. I was at a loss as to how to react to the situation. And to be honest, a part of me fell easily into the situation because I think a part of me was already in love with him. He might have amnesia, but I was the one who was insane. Except that it all felt right and good. Like when I put on a pair of jeans that hugged and fit and didn't do that gaping thing in the back when I bent down. He was exactly right for me in so many ways. Zelda wiggled her head as if weighing the two sides of this issue. Okay, fine. I get that he's a hard luck case. I snorted and lifted an eyebrow in challenge. Reggie was so darn good looking he could pay the bills with his smile. There was nothing hard luck about him. She giggled. I know. He doesn't look like one. Oh my gosh, how did you stand staring at him across the table and not jump into his lap and purr like a kitten? I rolled my eyes as I shoved off the desk and walked around it to sit down. Because I have a semblance of self-control. Just barely. If he'd offered his lap, I would have taken it in a heartbeat. Throwing myself at him wasn't the issue. Not feeling like a sly ball taking advantage of him was the elephant that had carried me home last night. Huh, you can't keep this up. You're the person who adds a pack of gum to the grocery store scale to account for the one grape you sampled to see if the fruit was ripe. She pointed at me. You were not made to fib to him. You're going to crack. The pressure of lying was like ultra-dry skin. It itched and pulled at my conscience, demanding attention. I only have to hold out until he gets his memory back. Then he'll know everything, and I can explain that this was an act of mercy, not selfishness. Are you sure that's what it is? I pressed my lips together. I want to believe that about myself. She leaned over my desk. Not even you are that good. I threw my hands up to shield my face. Okay. I relented. I liked being with him. A lot. He's funny, and he was insanely attentive as I spoke. My mom doesn't even listen to me that well. And when he touched me, I sighed. It was an out-of-body experience. I think I floated off my seat a couple times. Her face softened. I don't want you to like him. This whole thing isn't normal. Who gets amnesia? I narrowed my eyes as I clicked away at my keyboard, looking for the answer to her question. 1.8% of the population is affected by amnesia each year, according to Google. Shut up. Are you serious? She came around the table to stare at my screen. Her eyes darted back and forth as she scanned the article. That's for PTSD patients who block out trauma. Well, there weren't numbers for head injuries. Patient confidentially. I guessed at the cause for the lack of information. And who knows? Maybe the trauma of the accident was enough to cause the severity of his condition. It's rare to forget who you are. You read up on it last night, didn't you? Guilty. I clicked out of the search. None of the research changed my mind, though. I'm going to help him. As his girlfriend, she pressed. As a sort of girlfriend. He thinks I feel betrayed by his sudden disappearance, so he doesn't want to push me back into a relationship. He wants to work to earn my trust. But he doesn't need to do that. She picked up my paperweight and set it down hard. My best friend wasn't happy with me. Seeing things from her perspective, I could understand why. I couldn't justify my actions in a way that would make it all seem right. I just had a feeling that Reggie needed me. He didn't have any family nor friends left, and I was the only person he remembered. I couldn't tell him that we weren't anything important to each other and walk away. That would have been cruel. I know. I'm making it really easy on him. By pretending to love him. She shook her head in disappointment. Did you learn nothing from Sandra Bullock while you were sleeping? She married the guy. She married his brother after she came clean. She poked my arm. I didn't leave Reggie with a promise of any kind. Except that I'd try to help him find his life. I invited him here to ride the elevator with me and see if we could trigger some memories. Does that sort of thing work? It can't hurt. I figure we spent more time together in the elevator than anywhere else on this planet. If putting me, his one memory, in that same space doesn't trigger something, then I don't know what else to do. She brightened. Hey, maybe one of his coworkers will recognize him. There's always that possibility. I shoved away the guilt monster, which had a strange resemblance to my mother, and glanced at the clock. He'll be here about 5, so I have to get this report sent over to UCC. Zelda nodded. I have coding to go through. She stopped at my door. I want a full report. And whatever you do, don't fall in love with the guy tonight. Okay. I smiled without showing my teeth and muttered under my breath, too late. I might not be fully in love with Reggie, but I was infatuated with him, and at one point, for a whole 36 hours, I'd thought he was my soulmate. Thinking that made me feel ridiculous. Zelda was right. This whole situation was not normal. I just needed to get through the elevator situation so Reggie could remember, and all would be fine. Chapter 7. Reggie. Nothing. I squeezed my eyes shut as tight as I could. The entrance to the building didn't feel familiar. The tile floor sounded too loud as I walked across it. The one shining moment of coming to the place where I used to spend 40 hours a week was finding Iris waiting for me by the elevators. She looked beautiful in her work clothes. Simple, classic lines flattered her figure, and her hair pulled back into a low ponytail made her seem serious. All I wanted to do was free her locks and run my fingers through them. But I'd promised myself and her that I was going to take things slow and treat her right. So I stuffed my hands into my pockets. Nothing, I replied. I'm sorry. Her face softened. There's nothing to be sorry for. This whole thing is an experiment, and we don't know what kind of results we'll get. I probably should stop asking if you remember anything, though. I'm stressing you out. She motioned for me to push the call button. I did, and the up arrow lit to a dull yellow. You're not stressing me out. I reached for her hand. Honestly, I feel like I'm drowning in nothing. The dings, chatter, and daily office business crowded in on me and made it hard to breathe. I didn't like it here. I wanted to be at the park, with the sun on my face and the soft call of pigeons. This would be impossible without you. She smiled up at me. That's why I'm here. She tightened her hold on my hand. You're not going through this alone, okay? I nodded, doing my best to reconcile this space with the way it made me feel. There's all this pressure. I put my fingers over my chest and pressed down. Hey. Iris touched my cheek and turned my face toward her. Just breathe. Her chest lifted as she drew in air. I automatically followed her example, and my blood pressure went down. As it did, I noticed that my heart was still beating fast. I glanced at our clasped hands and brushed my finger over her knuckles. My heart skipped a beat, and I grinned. Yeah, there was a difference between my response to this building and my response to Iris. With her, it was all good things. With the building, there was a sense that I didn't belong here. The elevator opened and several people spilled out. I stared at each of them, not caring that I got dirty looks in return. I wanted so badly to recognize someone, to get another connection to my old life. Although, if that life was spent in this building, maybe I didn't want it as much as I thought I did. As soon as the space cleared, we stepped in. The door shut, leaving the two of us alone. So, I glanced around. Did we always kiss in here? She let out a high-pitched, strained laugh. No, that was a first. The silver-plated walls and tile floor didn't hold any memories for me. She did. All I could think about was the smell of her skin. I leaned closer, trying not to be obvious as I drank in her familiar scent. How long did we date? She cleared her throat, her eyes on the numbers above the door. We flirted for 5 months before you kissed me. So I'm a slow mover cautious? She pressed her lips together. I think you can be whatever you want to be. She turned and met my eyes. What do you want to be, Reggie? What I wanted was to crawl inside of her heart and stay there. It was a safe place. I just knew that. She wasn't a game player or a manipulative sort. Her innocence and purity shone through her blue eyes. She couldn't hide it from me if she tried. I ran my free hand through my hair as I contemplated her question. The elevator dinged on the 37th floor, and she stepped out. This is my office. She chewed her lip as she glanced around. The receptionist's desk was empty. But you worked higher up. Do you want to keep writing? We can stop at every floor if you'd like. I nodded. Do you have time? I blocked out the evening. She stepped back in and grabbed my hand. A sense of relief washed over me. Thank you. I don't deserve you. I kissed the back of her hand. A shiver ran over her and I grinned, gobsmacked that I had that kind of effect on her, because she had all kinds of effects on me. She pressed every button to the top floor. I can't imagine I'm a top floor kind of guy. Nothing about this place felt right. It was like I didn't have any ties here. It was just a big, empty building. She chuckled. Your shoes said you were. My what? She blushed a pretty coral color. You have expensive shoes. I noticed them the first day we rode the elevator together. I couldn't believe you were talking to me when your shoes cost more than a month's rent. I blinked, glancing down at the leather shoes I'd walked out of the hospital in. I had no idea they were worth that much money. She cocked her head, waiting for me to expound. I kept talking even as the doors opened on the next floor. The room was done in red and white, very modern art. I shook my head and she pressed the button to close the doors. It's strange. Everything is stripped away. My identity. My preferences. I had to relearn what kind of pizza I like. Ham and pineapple, she offered. I grinned. Yeah, how did you know? She glanced away, as if admitting a wrong. Was it hard for her to look at what we had and remember the good times? I didn't want it to be that way. We had an extensive conversation on the complete desecration of good pizza by putting pineapple on it. My mouth fell open. The sweetness against the salty is what makes it. Her smile brightened. You said that same thing that day. I did. She patted my stomach. You're still in there. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in ages. Do you want to come home with me? Her face froze. She blinked several times. Excuse me. I tugged her closer, knowing full well that I'd implied something I didn't mean. Watching her squirm was so much fun that I decided to go with it. We could order a pizza with pineapple, like God intended it. Turn the lights down and make some memories. I tucked a piece of hair behind her ear. Had I ever done that before? It felt totally new and yet forbidden at the same time. I relished both feelings. Reggie. She half sighed, half begged me with the word. I laughed, relaxing my hold on her. I'm kidding. Unless you want to. She stepped back and fanned her face. Don't tempt me. I cocked a smile. She smacked my arm. Knock it off. You're too cute for your own good. The doors opened, and I stepped halfway out and looked around. The space was all grays and blacks. Depressing. I stepped back inside and pressed the closed door button myself. No, here's the thing. I hesitated, not wanting her to think less of me but wanting to share the moment. Scared when I got out of the hospital. So scared that I didn't want to go home. So I checked into a hotel. What? Her shriek echoed off the walls. She dropped my hand and started pushing the button for the first floor over and over again. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What? I asked. You haven't been home in 3 months? No, I replied reservedly. She'd lost the plot, gone bonkers. Her eyes were big enough to land airplanes with. We have to go right now. Her voice took on a sharp tone and she eyed me through narrow slits. Why? You could have a cat. Thank you, Sandra Bullock. She stopped and looked up at the ceiling. Or a wife. The last word came out strained. I froze in place and glanced down at my left hand. No ring. PFT. Like that means anything these days. She continued to push the button and refused to look at me. Wouldn't you know if I had a wife? She gave me a dubious look, like she was going to have to explain how an affair worked. Listen. I am not, nor will I ever be, the other woman. If you have a wife at home, I will step away and let you work this whole thing out. She gestured to all of me. I covered my face, needing a minute to process this. If I had a wife, I wouldn't kiss you. She backed up against the wall. Speaking low, she asked, Do you know that beyond a shadow of a doubt? No, I gulped, hating that I didn't know myself well enough to know if I was a jerk or not. Fine. We'll go find out if I'm married or have a cat. I glanced at her from the side of my eye. But don't bank on either. I don't feel like a cat person. Dog, she asked. Yeah, big dogs that bang into tables and bark with deep voices. I kind of like the idea. A smile ghosted across her lips. She folded her arms, and I gave up hope that she'd let me hold her hand for comfort until we figured all this out. I felt horrible that I hoped there wasn't a woman in the apartment who missed me. I didn't want another woman. I wanted Iris. But what if I was already taken? Chapter 8. Iris. My stomach had a weight in it that made me want to lean over a public garbage can and puke. Of course Reggie would be married. Guys like him didn't stay on the market for long. He was handsome, wealthy, and successful. What was I worried about a wife for when the man probably had a harem? Ugh. Marriage just made so much sense. The harmless flirting with a woman in the elevator every day that didn't amount to anything more. Except a kiss. Maybe I'd triggered his Superman complex that day, asking him to save me, and he'd kissed me out of some weird need to be a hero. What was wrong with me? I didn't flirt with married men. The cab pulled up in front of a beautiful building. The whole first floor was glass. I craned my neck to see the thick carpeting and overstuffed chairs in the waiting area. Not to mention the crystal chandeliers and the doorman in a uniform. Oh yeah, I was way out of my league here. We got out of the car and I clicked the pay button on my phone. Reggie insisted on using his credit card, but I overrode him with the fact that he didn't know where the bill was going nor how much he owed. It was more responsible for me to pay. "Welcome back, Mr. Piper," said the doorman as he pulled the door open for us. "It's good to see you." "You too," Reggie replied, his eyes dropping to the gold name tag. "Steven." I studied the doorman's face as we passed, looking for a sign that I was about to walk into a situation I'd rather avoid. Certainly, Steven had an obligation to the woman of the house and would warn me to run away. Wouldn't he? He tipped his hat to me with a grin. Okay, so I was officially welcomed into the building. Either he was used to seeing Reggie with strange women, or I was overanalyzing everything because this little dream world where my elevator boyfriend became my real boyfriend was getting to me. Despite Steven's crooked-toothed smile, my stomach stayed in knots as we rode up to the 17th floor. I couldn't have kissed a married man. That was just wrong. I eyed him. He wouldn't have kissed me if he was married, would he? Ugh. I hated this. In my head, Reggie was the perfect man. Having that image tossed to the ground and stomped on would tear me up inside. The elevator opened, and we stepped onto a quiet floor. There was a long table and a mirror opposite us, like something you'd see in an upscale hotel. This whole place screamed wealthy. What did Reggie do for a living? Thankfully, when he'd asked me, I could honestly say that we'd never talked about our jobs, except to complain about a coworker here or there. He'd seemed to think that was a fine answer and hadn't pressed me for more information. "This way," he said, pointing at a sign that said apartments 1700 to 1721 were to the right. I sniffed the air. "What are you doing?" he asked. Thanks to Becca, I was seriously freaked out that a cat had been left behind 3 months ago. Images of a shredded leather couch and overturned plants flashed before my eyes. Smelling for something dead. I sniffed again, and this time Reggie joined me. Great, now he was worried about it too. I wasn't helping much, but the closer we got to his door, the more I freaked out. My imaginary boyfriend could very quickly become a restraining order with my name on it. We stopped and stared at the door. "One thing at a time," I said. He nodded and pressed his ear against the door. "I don't hear anything," he whispered. "That's because you're not home," I whispered back, earning a smile. My nerves were on high alert, but I couldn't stand knowing I was making this harder for him than it already was by sniffing out a dead body. "Still, let's knock. If a woman answers the door, I'll pretend I'm delivering you." He nodded, staring at his shoes. "You won't leave, though?" "I have to." His eyebrows pulled together. "I don't want to," I added quickly. "But really, if you're living with someone, then she'll know all about you and be able to step in my place. Being with her would be healthier in the long run than being with me." "Fine. But if there's not a woman or a dead cat, you stay for dinner." His voice was low and lost, tugging at all my heartstrings with the strength of an excavation machine. "You're not making this easy." I reached up and knocked on the door, needing to get this moment over with. We both jumped back as if I'd sprung a booby trap. Nothing happened. After 15 seconds, Reggie leaned his ear against the door again. "I don't think anyone is here." I swallowed. The first major hurdle was passed. How do we get in? He fished his wallet out of his pocket and held up a key card with an address on the back. This matches the address on my driver's license. I balked. That's not at all safe. Having your address printed on your key. Who does that? I took it from him and waved it in front of the pad. The thing buzzed red, and when I tried the door, it didn't budge. He smirked. I guess I'm not as dumb as you thought. I never thought you were dumb. I thought whoever made the key was dumb. I handed it back to him. He flipped it over. Maybe they give them out the first day, and I didn't clean out my wallet. He lifted his gaze to meet mine, a look of mock horror written there. Maybe I'm a hoarder. I lifted a shoulder. Could be. Who didn't watch the occasional YouTube video about the secret life of hoarders? Reggie could be one. There was no way to tell from the outside. He leaned against the door frame. Did you ever come here? I shook my head. We always met at work. I hated myself for how easily the lies rolled off my tongue, maybe because they weren't outright lies, but curving the truth to fit his paradigm. I was going straight to hell. I looked closer at the door, avoiding his penetrating gray eyes. There's a bio reader. Try your fingerprint. He stuck his thumb on the pad. The light turned green, and the door lock clicked. We both stared at the knob in horror. It was like now that we knew we could go in, neither one of us wanted to take that first step. Go on. I shoved his arm to get him moving. No, love. Ladies first. He shoved my arm back. I furiously shook my head to leave no doubt in his mind that he was going in first. Together. He held up a hand, waiting for me to take it. I cringed. Okay, but can I close my eyes? I really don't want to see a dead animal. His face softened. I really don't think there is one. But sure. I breathed out a sigh and took his hand. It was warm and solid, and all the wonderful things I'd wanted in a hand to hold for all of time. Suddenly anxious for answers, I turned the knob and threw the door open. The entry was stunning with expensive tile, light gray walls, and a very English-looking umbrella stand with a dark trench coat. Hey, that's your coat. I remembered it from last spring. He stepped inside and looked around, sniffing loudly. The coast smells clear. I smelled the air, determining he was right, and allowed him to pull me inside. The entry opened up on the right to a living room with a big screen TV. I let out a whistle. Do you host premiere parties or something? Football. He stared at the screen, then blinked. I think I like football. I liked the way he said the word, with the emphasis on the F instead of the T. I clapped my hand to my forehead. I totally forgot. You're into American football. Your favorite team is the Texas Wolves. I laughed. The Monday after they won the Super Bowl, you wore a jersey over your shirt and tied to the office. He thought for a minute, absorbing the information but not agreeing to it. But I'm British. I laughed. I teased you about that very thing, saying you should be into soccer or cricket or even badminton, but you insisted you were a die-hard fan. I turned to stare at the television. I guess you weren't lying. We circled the room, looking for clues about him. The end tables were clean and empty. No pictures with a woman or a family, not even his parents. I started to relax about the wife's situation, though someone had dusted. A maid, perhaps. I guess I'll check the bedroom. He headed that way. I followed, feeling like I should be close in case he needed me and not wanting to prowl his apartment like a creeper. I already felt like one anyway. He flipped on the light and I gasped. Your bed is ginormous. Made of dark wood with white blankets and sheets, the thick-beamed furniture took up most of the floor space. The whole makeup screamed English castle and was out of place in the modernist home. What is that? I pointed to something I didn't understand. He walked in, running a hand over the top of the piece. I think it's a Chesler. He weighed the word for a second. Yeah, a combo dresser and chest. It's beautiful. I pulled open a door. Inside were drawers and shelves of varying sizes. He had a basket with his ties rolled up neatly in spirals. You're organized. No hoarding. He shut the door, and I pulled my hand out before it was pinched. I feel like I'm invading someone's privacy. None of this speaks to me. He waved his hand around. I don't know why I would need a bed like that. Am I afraid I'll fall off? And these clothes, they're for a successful man. If I'm so good at what I do, Why hasn't anyone from my field been looking for me? Maybe they have, but they didn't know where to look. He didn't comment on my comment. Instead, he tiptoed around the room, barely touching things as if he were afraid of disturbing them. I watched, uncertain what his reaction would be if his memories did come back. I also scoped out the place for any signs of a long-term woman. The nightstand was empty. The closet only had dark suits hanging on the rod and men's shoes. Even the glimpse I'd gotten in the Chesler was clear of anything lace or satin. Finally, he made his way back to me. The only thing I like in here is this. He patted the Chesler. Everything else feels so cold. His arms had goosebumps. I picked up his hand and rubbed his arm, feeling braver about being the only woman in his life. Maybe that's just the ghost of the memory trying to come out. So far, I'm unimpressed with me. He lightly cuffed my chin. What did you ever see in me anyway? My brain shorted out. You're totally hot, I blurted. I burst out laughing at how stupid that sounded, and I laughed harder as the stress of possibly being the other woman melted away. I didn't have to stake a claim, and I hadn't stepped on someone else's. That was a wonderful feeling. Reggie was free. Free to touch. Free to hold. Free to kiss again. I tucked that thought away for a minute. It wasn't like I could jump on top of him and land a kiss on his lips without warning. He was being a gentleman, and I was trying to help him sort out his life, not make it more confusing when he finally did get his memories back. That's not what I meant to say, I got out between giggles. His neck muscles relaxed, and he laughed lightly. At least I still got my looks. I ducked, my face turning red. He had to know I was attracted to him, but saying it out loud shone a light on the attraction between us always simmering beneath the surface. Come on, lover boy. Let's look at the kitchen. We headed that direction. The kitchen was something out of a Food Network special where top chefs compete for a chance to be verbally abused by someone they respect. I ran my hand over the granite countertop and sighed happily. The only thing that could make this room better would be a fresh batch of cookies right here. I made a big circle in front of me. I can do biscuits, Reggie quipped as he opened the fridge. Really? I was all ears and now salivating taste buds. There was nothing sexier than a man who could cook. Except maybe a man who could clean. Judging from the looks of this place, Reggie was the sexiest man alive. Gah. Reggie stepped back from the fridge, covering his mouth. I think we found that dead thing you were worried about. What? I shoved the door all the way open to look, against my better judgment, and was assaulted by the stench of 3-month-old rotting food. Oh man. I buried my mouth and nose into my elbow. We gotta get that out of here. Find something, anything, to carry it in. I dove for under the sink and came up with a box of garbage bags. I snapped one off the roll, and he grabbed the towel hanging on the stove to use as protection for his hands as he pulled containers out and dropped them in the bag. I dry heaved. It was not my finest moment, and I was mortified that I did it in front of Reggie. He grabbed another bag, snapped it open, and tucked it around the first one. Shove the opening in. I twisted the top and tucked it down, cutting off the smell, though it lingered something awful. What now? I panicked, not wanting to set it down anywhere in this pristine apartment. Who lived like this? The garbage chute. He grabbed the bag from me and took off running. I let him go, trying to breathe without smelling. It was awful. I looked under the sink for a cleaner or anything I could use to get the smell out. I found a bottle of air freshener and started spraying. Reggie came back a moment later and pointed at the can in my hand. Quick thinking, love. He went to the sink to wash his hands. I nodded, my arm still across my face. When I'd emptied the bottle, I tossed it in the trash can and washed my hands too. We both were breathing hard from running around and trying not to smell anything. Reggie glanced at the empty fridge and his shoulders slumped. I guess we're ordering in. I looked at him, noting the way he slouched forward and his chin lowered. He really wanted to make me dinner. I wondered if cooking was something he'd enjoyed. But I'd asked him a half-dozen times about remembering things, and each time he didn't have an answer, the spark in his eyes dimmed a little more. Instead of asking, I decided to discover. Come on. I headed for the door. Where are we going? He hurried to keep up with my determined pace. There's a market not far from here. I'll take you shopping. You're going to need some food if you stay here anyway. He perked up. Really? Really? I grinned back at him. Besides, you said you could make cookies, and I'm a sucker for a good chocolate chip biscuit. I said the last word with an accent. He put an arm around my shoulders and hugged me to his side. I guess that means you're not worried I have a wife. I rolled my eyes and poked his side. Having his arm around me this time felt different, possessive, and purposeful. Like he was stating that he was into me and wasn't going to let me go without a fight. I guess not. He kissed my hair and my head filled with helium. Good. Because I want to do things like this and I'm tired of holding back. I laughed, uncertain. My body screamed, yes. Hold me. Love me. And all the while, my head said, don't you dare let him think he loves you. He stopped to look at me. What's wrong? Am I moving too fast? No, the word was out before I could stop it. Curse my gut and its ability to answer before my head could think things through. I just can't believe we're standing here together after all this time. I ran my eyes over the outline of his lips, wondering what it would be like to kiss him now, with his feelings for me blazing in his eyes. He looked at me with an intensity that took my breath away. My doctors kept telling me how lucky I was. I didn't believe them until you looked at me like that. Like what? I wanted to look into a mirror and see what was written across my face, but there wasn't one handy, and I had a hard time pulling my eyes away from Reggie. I was stuck there, like I'd fallen into a wishing well full of treasures. Like you like me. Of course I like you. I smacked his arm. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. He shook his head, smiling like I'd missed his meaning. I didn't. I knew exactly what he was talking about. I'd looked at him like I wanted him to kiss me. Heaven help me if he did. I might never be able to walk away. Chapter 9. Reggie. The small grocery, situated on a corner with doors on both streets, had a surprising variety of products fit into the small cupboard of a shop. Not only was there a selection of food, but they mixed in cooking bits and bobs as well. If I needed a wire whisk, I now knew where to get one. I could see myself shopping here again as it had an English feel to it, and I was glad that Iris had recommended it. I was wholly pleased that she was wandering up and down the aisle with a small blue basket hanging in the crook of her arm. She was the rock in my turbulent life. I couldn't believe the courage she'd muscled forth to confront my past life. I'd not even thought of having a family waiting for me, mostly because I figured that they would have found me if they existed. But she was seriously nearly off her trolley about the fact that I could have been married. It made me wonder what kind of a man I used to be. And then I wondered what kind of men she normally dated. One of the hardest things about losing my memory was that I'd lost my directions, spiritual, personal, and professionally speaking. I guess there were a lot of people who wished they could wipe the slate clean and start over. It might sound great to someone who'd made a lot of mistakes in life, but it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. My solace was, like Iris said, that I could choose who to be from this moment forward. In a way, I'd been baptized by forgetfulness. God wouldn't hold my sins against me if I couldn't remember them, right? So from the moment I'd woken up from the accident, I'd been washed clean. At least, that's what the hospital clergyman had assured me when I'd brought up my concerns. Shaking my head out of the deep thoughts it tended to tumble into lately, I reached for a package of turkey slices. Iris scrutinized the package. What? I glanced at it, wondering if this brand had a reputation for going dodgy sooner than others. Nothing. I'm just nothing. Keep going. She rolled her hand to indicate that I should ignore her humming and press on. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye as I selected a package of prosciutto. Her delectable lips pressed together, but she didn't make a comment. I wondered if she knew something I didn't. Did we eat turkey together? She shook her head. No. Why? I just wondered. I took her free hand in mine as we walked, feeling grounded and yet elated at the same time. This woman brought up all sorts of feelings inside of me. She was new, and yet she was the oldest memory I had. She slipped a caramel chocolate bar into her basket, and I made a note of it. You like caramel? She glanced down. It's for my mom, actually. I like to have one on hand for when she stops by. That way, she grabbed a plain milk chocolate bar. She leaves my chocolate alone. They say a good offense is the best defense. I paused. Wait. Who says that? She giggled. No one in particular. It's just a saying. She tugged me along, and we ended up in front of the dairy section. I reached for camembert cheese and dropped it into my basket. One side of her mouth lifted. I pulled her to a stop. Okay, what gives? What? She gave me a completely innocent look that wouldn't fool a department store Santa Claus. You're judging my food choices. Her eyebrows lowered in challenge. I am not. Then why do you smirk every time I put something in my basket? She drew a breath. Okay, here's the thing. You don't remember who you are, but your stomach remembers what you like to eat. I suddenly panicked. What if I didn't? What if it was pizza all over again, and I had to go through all the brands of cold cuts before I found the one I liked? And what if I didn't even like turkey? Would I have to relearn how to eat? Surely not. I'd been eating hospital food for months. While I didn't particularly enjoy some things, I seemed to know what I preferred. I shoved my basket out so I could look through the items. My stomach growled. You're right, love. I want to eat all of this. She giggled. Maybe not at once. No, I laughed with her, feeling the fear let go of me as I held on to her words. You know what I mean. I like this food. I remember what it tastes like. It was possible that the pizza incident had been brought on by fear and doubting myself. I was open to that because in those first couple of weeks, I'd been truly scared. She gave my hand a shake. You're worried about not being you, but this is all you. I placed my hand on her hip, noting the perfect fit. You have no idea what this means to me. I know it sounds stupid because it's cheese and crackers, but for the first time, I have confidence in myself. I leaned over quickly, doing what my body said it wanted to do, and kissed her hair, drawing in her scent as I did. For a long time, the only thing I had confidence in was you. I knew once I found you, life would click into place. And look at what you've done for me already. I lifted my basket. She laid her hand on my chest, and I hoped she could feel my heart hammer away. I wanted her to know what she did to me. Reggie, your brain may not remember, but your body does. Maybe just relax and listen to it for a while, see what it can teach you. I tuned into my body and felt the heat in my lower belly, stirring like bright embers ready to burst into flame because of Iris's nearness. I noted the blood pumping through my arms, urging me to hold her close. My mouth went dry, wanting to draw moisture from her lips. It's talking to me. I locked eyes with her. The attraction that was always at a low simmer when we were together glowed hot. What's it saying? She rasped as if her mouth was dried by the same flame. That it likes this. I tugged on her hip, closing the distance between us. As she moved forward, the coals grew hotter, burning brighter, urging me to push limits. Oh, she barely managed to make a sound. And this. I cupped her cheek, reveling in the softness against my skin. She was warm and slowly becoming pliable as she melted into my body, using me for support. I brushed my thumb over her bottom lip. I'm hungry for you, Iris. She let out a small whimper, which I took as permission to cover her mouth with mine. I had a primal need for her, one that I'd been pushing away from the moment I'd found her in that soup cart line. She gasped against my lips, and her basket dropped to the floor with a thud. I tugged her closer and wrapped my arms tight, never wanting to let her go. She tasted like mint and heaven. Her lips were soft and supple, doing everything I asked them to do. When I tugged on her bottom lip, she moaned and her knees gave out. I gathered her up, ready to haul her out of there and sequester away in my apartment. Reggie, she gasped a plea. Ahem. The store manager walked by, glowering. I jerked my chin to let him know I'd heard him, at the same time relaxing my hold on Iris. I maybe got carried away there. You and me both. She gently touched her swollen lips. The thing is, I retrieved our baskets. My body wants you. I wish I could say this was all familiar, but when I kiss you, it's like I'm learning your taste all over again. And yet, there's no doubt that it's right. She stepped away, taking her basket with her, and I had this feeling that a wall was being thrown up. I reached for her, not wanting to let that happen, but not sure how to stop it because I didn't know what I'd done wrong. If she didn't want me to kiss her, then she had a funny way of showing it. Her lips had been willing, active participants in that tango. Listen, Reggie. She fidgeted with the handle. I'm not. I mean, we're not what you think we are. I know. I messed that up. You didn't mean to get hit by a car. That's not what I'm talking about. She squeezed her eyes shut and then opened them quickly. What I mean is that even before the accident, we weren't serious. Okay, maybe we weren't. But you told me to trust my body, to listen to it. I put my hand over my chest. My heart knows what it wants, and that's you. You're the only thing my head and my heart agree on. Please don't shut me out. Give me a chance to see if we work. That's all I'm asking. Like start from scratch? Hope blazed through my being. I brushed her hair over her shoulder. I'd rather start from this moment right here after our second kiss. I want to be able to say that you're mine and not have to worry that some other guy is going to sweep in and take you away. I want to be together and woo you and know that all your softness, I brushed my fingers over her lips, belongs to me. Her light blue eyes dilated, and my attraction to her spiked. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, you'll be my girlfriend. She blushed that beautiful coral color. Yes, I'll be yours. I kissed her, hard and demanding, branding her in a way that seared us both. I'm making you dinner. I tugged her toward the checkout, grabbing ingredients along the way. You're kind of bossy, she remarked. I glanced over my shoulder to see a saucy grin on her face. And I kind of like it, she added. No wonder she'd left her mark on me. Every part of me was attracted to every part of her, and my physical reactions to just a look were strong enough to knock me off my feet. I didn't know if I was the type to settle down and get married, but I wanted to be. I wanted to be with Iris in every sense of the word and create little Reggies and Irises together. I'd been given a second chance at living, and I wanted a life, one with Iris that included all the best things, like a loving family and broken faucets and markers on the wall and putting the kids to bed early so we could enjoy one another. All of it. Starting right here was killing me when I could be so much more for her. Chapter 10. Iris. And he wants to meet me again? Asked Mom, her eyes so big they could signal the International Space Station. I took a deep breath. Yes, since we're officially a thing, we're moving forward as if this is a real relationship. I glanced around the park where Reggie and I had decided to meet up for this little get-to-know-my-mom date. I'd mentioned that she and I liked to go for ice cream here because the guy with the cart always gave us an extra big scoop and my mom thought he was distinguished in his red and white striped shirt, like one of the characters out of Mary Poppins. A couple of weeks ago, she'd asked him if he tap danced. He did not. Thankfully, he wasn't put off by her strange question, and I still got my extra serving of moose tracks. Wait. She held up her hands. What do you mean, real relationship? I buried my face in my free hand. It is real. It just doesn't feel real because it's all based on the fact that he thinks we were a couple before. I flopped back against the park bench and let out a moan. Then I used ice cream for comfort. Navigating our relationship was relatively easy when we were together because we got along splendidly. However, explaining it to my mom proved to be harder than swimming through peanut butter. I thought you said he wanted to start fresh. No, I said that. Well, she lifted a shoulder. If you clarified, then you're fine. Honestly, honey, if I had a handsome Brit after me, I wouldn't be so upset about it. She leaned closer. Are you feeling well? I stopped her hand before she could test my forehead. I feel fine. Why was this so hard for her to get? I gritted my teeth. I didn't tell him about what we were or weren't before the accident. My mouth ran bitter. It's a lie of omission. She frowned at her salted caramel ice cream. I see your point. Thank you. I threw up a hand in victory. One look at her disappointed face, and my arm sank like a hammer. I was in for a lecture. You can't say anything to me that I haven't already told myself, I warned her. The flint in her eyes replied, Do you want to bet? Iris. Reggie called. I searched for him in the stragglers walking the trail. He'd mentioned an issue with being on the streets, the result of some anxiety, and I worried for him. Hello, he called again, and my eyes landed on a man on a bike. Goodness, Mom exclaimed, barely keeping it low enough that me and the pigeons waiting to see if we'd finish our cones or share with them could hear. My face heated because, yeah, Reggie in tight pants and a bike shirt was a sight to see. Goodness was right. He had leg muscles I hadn't known existed, and I could only guess how good he looked riding away. And all of that wanted all of me, according to him. It was enough to make an ego explode. Hey! He braked in front of us and unclicked his shoes from the pedals. Turns out, riding a bike is like riding a bike. You don't forget. I laughed. That's fantastic. He'd made a few jokes about losing his memory over the last week. I took comfort in the fact that by joking about his situation, he was accepting it on some level. I also admired the heck out of him for not becoming bitter or jaded. I'd asked him about that last night as we'd been curled up in front of his big screen television, not watching the movie. He'd said that he didn't know what he was missing, so there wasn't anything to be upset about, and that he'd been able to find the best part of his life beforehand me. How could a girl confess her underhandedness and deception when a guy said things like that? For all I knew, I really had been the best thing in his life before the accident. He certainly was in mine. Besides, my explanation that we hadn't dated long covered the bases. I knew enough about him that he assumed we'd shared things. In reality, my knowledge of him consisted of random bits of conversation I cherished and relived in my head enough times to memorize the details. I really was pathetic on several levels. Shoving away my self-deprecation, I touched the handlebars. "Where'd you get all the gear?" I asked. The bike was sleek and had all the bells and whistles. His shoes were scuffed and worn in, and the helmet had a tiny dent in the front, like a bike in front of him had kicked up a rock. The clothes were in my chesler, and I have a storage unit. He motioned to the bike. My mouth fell open. "You do?" He was certainly taking me by surprise. "It's in the basement of my building, and the bike barely fits." But as soon as I saw it, I knew I wanted to ride. He climbed off and turned his brilliant smile on my mother. "Hello, lady." He offered his hand. "I'm Reggie." Mom glanced at me to see if I realized how much this moment was like their first meeting. I nodded. She took his hand, and he turned it over and kissed the back. Mom gasped. "You did that before." He straightened. "I did. Does he do that to everyone?" Mom asked me. "No," I smiled at him. "He wants to charm you into keeping him." Reggie gave us both a roguish grin. Guilty. Who could ever stay mad at a man so impishly handsome? I laughed right along with Mom. "Shoot. I think I'm officially charmed. You're quite the young man, Reggie. I'm happy to meet you." "Likewise," he said, his accent making the words seem polished like a silver tea set. "If we're not careful, he'll have us both wrapped around his finger," I warned. I finished off my cone and tossed the wrapper in a nearby garbage can. Mom threw away what was left of hers without finishing. The sound startled the pigeons, and they flew off to beg from a child with a P-banjo. "So, is this the first of the parental meetings? Are you going to fly Iris off to England to meet your family?" "Mom." I threw out one word and hoped it contained all the warnings. First, we'd only been officially dating for a week. Second, Reggie had amnesia. I'd just told her that. He didn't remember who he was, so how would I meet his family? Third, his family, if there was one, hadn't come looking for him while he was in the hospital. What if they were jerks or something? Reggie didn't seem bothered by the fact that he didn't have answers. I'm not sure what's happening there. I checked my cell, and I didn't have a contact saved under Mom or Dad. Anyone with the same last name? Mom prodded. I could see her interest growing. She fancied herself an amateur sleuth when it came to family trees, and Reggie was a carrot dangling in front of her. I questioned my sanity for introducing them so soon. I should have seen that gleam in her eye coming. Nope. He retrieved the water bottle off the holder on the bike and took a sip. Mom clasped her hands together as if offering a secret prayer. "I'll help." Reggie stopped mid-swallow and lowered the bottle. How he managed to do that without spitting all over himself or choking, I'd never know. His personal charisma was off the charts. I jumped in to save him. He told me he wanted to make a good impression, and he'd probably let her dig up his grandmother if it would help. "Mom, I'm sure Reggie has enough going on right now that he doesn't want to dig into familybackgrounds.com. That's not what it's called, and you know it." She lightly slapped my arm before turning to Reggie. "I'm a genealogist." Amateur, I coughed into my fist. Mom scowled, but continued listing her credentials. I helped my friend Mabel find her biological father, and Sarah find her grandma's grave in Florida. I held my breath, my emotions jumping all over the place. On the one hand, it would be great if Reggie was reunited with his family, even if they were across the pond. But on the other, they may not like me or him, for that matter. What would he do with that kind of rejection? It all felt so early on. He needed time to adjust to life as it was without having to deal with whatever hung in his family tree. By the time I'd formed an articulate rejection, Mom was copying down Reggie's full name and birth date off his driver's license. That should be enough to get me started. If you can find your green card and passport, that'll help. Reggie beamed. This is so much more than I could have hoped for. Thank you so much. He threw his arm around my shoulders. Your mom's brilliant. I slapped on a smile. Yes, she is. The more I thought about things, the less I wanted Reggie to dig into his past. There was a reason back there, a reason that had kept him from asking me out. It could very well be that he was a second cousin to the prince and 24th in line for the crown and couldn't marry a commoner. Of course, both English princes had married regular gals, not that either of them looked regular. Seriously, people shouldn't be that beautiful all the time. I told my stomach to unknot itself. It was all going to be all right. Whatever happened was meant to happen. I just didn't want it to happen to me. Yes, meeting up with Reggie the day he got out of the hospital seemed serendipitous, but what if our life paths were only supposed to cross so that my mom could find his family and ship him back to England? That would totally suck. The more I stewed over the bad things that could come out of this, the worse I felt. My ice cream was now a glob of ick, and dread hung off my shoelaces, making it hard to keep pace with the energy Reggie and Mom used to spur them along. After a lap around the park, where Reggie pushed his bike and probably hurt his feet in those clip-on shoes, he and Mom were fast friends. Great. I mean, I'd always wanted the man I brought home to get along with my mom, but this just felt too right. So right that it had to be wrong. Right? We said goodbye with a chaste kiss, and as soon as he was out of earshot, I rounded on my mom. How could you do that? Do what? She lifted her hands as if totally innocent. Offer to help him. Tears stung my eyes, and I sniffed, commanding them not to fall. This was the beginning of the end. I could feel it all the way down to my toes. Honey, Mom touched my arm. What is it? I took a shuddering breath. It's just, I searched my heart, trying to put words to the jumbled feelings there. I really like him. That's good. It's generally a good idea to like the person you kiss. Will you be serious for a minute? I grabbed her arm and shook it. She extracted her limb from my grip. I am. I'd be worried if you didn't like him. Mom, we spent 5 months flirting in an elevator, and the man didn't make a move. He didn't ask me out. He didn't even ask my name. Mom's smile faded into a look of confusion. Why not? I folded my arms. Like I had an answer for that one. I don't know, but at this point, I think it's a good thing he doesn't remember. What if he does and decides to break up with me? Honey. She put her arm around my back, and we fell in step. You can't hold him back. I mumbled something that didn't make sense. In my head, it was I just want him for a little longer. Out loud, it sounded like I'd dulk. What if he does remember and then thinks it's stupid, she offered. I sniffed and swiped at my eyes. Trust you to be optimistic about this. She grinned and bumped me with her hip. You should be too. You two are perfect for each other. It's so obvi. I moaned at her slang. Stop TikTok, Mom. It's entertaining. She shrugged. Anyway, you two are great together, and no matter why he didn't pursue you before, he's doing it now. Enjoy it. I nodded. Easy for her to say. There's a big cleaver hanging over my heart that could drop at any moment, but enjoy it. And figure out a way to tell him the whole truth without breaking his heart. I'd like to call that man my son someday. I shook my head at her. Optimistic and delusional. The two traits that run full strength through our DNA. I was delusional in thinking this little lie would pan out. In my head, Reggie would get his memory back the first time we stepped into that elevator, and we'd go from there. But that hadn't happened. I'd moved from having a plan to punting every outing and phone call. Mark my words, Iris. Mom patted my arm. He's meant to be a part of our family. Is that your genealogical superpower talking? I teased, ready to move on from the heaviness of discussing my possible breakup and shunning from the man of my dreams. She lifted her chin. My cape is made of microfiche. I hip bumped Mom, and we moved on to talk about the trouble Grandpa caused in his assisted living center. He flirted with the nurses to get extra desserts, and the other men were onto him. I came from a long line of characters, that's for sure. Not that I could use that as an excuse for misleading my leading man. Reggie was going to be so mad at me when he figured everything out. I hoped the day never came. Then I felt horribly guilty for wanting him to stay just as he was. There was no good place for me to land at the end of all this. The cliff loomed, and I couldn't find the break. The best I could do was stick my head in the sand and pretend I didn't see the danger. Which was stupid, but also wonderful. Because the time I spent with Reggie was the happiest of my life. Better than when Brady Manning asked me to prom. Better than when I got the scholarship that paid everything but books. And way better than when my volleyball team took regionals. Reggie and I belonged together. Mom was right, though. I'd have to come clean soon. The deeper I fell into this relationship, the more I wanted the real thing. I'd never get it while this lie sat between us. But now the truth was as big as the lie. Reggie hadn't been interested in me before the accident, and what we shared was fragile enough that the knowledge of that could crack it wide open. Chapter 11. Reggie. I walked out of the bank feeling like I'd won the lottery. Men and women of all sorts streamed past me, busy with their own lives and goals. A few children held fast to their parents' or nanny's hand, none of them wide-eyed like I'd been when I stepped out of the hospital and into the heart of the Big Apple. I'd felt drawn to the city in a way, like the pulse of it matched my own. But I also had a desire to not be a nameless face in the crowd. I wanted to matter, if not to everyone, at least to someone. I shook off the ghost of longing and stepped into the flow of traffic on the gum-stained sidewalk. After tracking down my account information in a filing drawer in my home office and finding an address for the nearest location online, I'd headed over to find out if I was going to lose my lease. It was strange that it took me so long to do a simple task like locate my bank account number. Thankfully, my memory since the accident was great. I wouldn't have to go through all this the next time I wanted to get some money out to buy dinner. The bank teller had some good news. I'd set up automatic wire transfers for all my bills long before the accident, which meant that I wasn't behind on any payments. I gave myself a pat on the back for that one. It appeared I hadn't been a complete bumbling fool before being hit by a car. I often wondered about why I'd stepped into traffic that day. Had I been in a bad spot and at the end of my rope? Incapable of navigating the streets of New York on my own? Or was it a simple distraction that had cost me so much? I didn't have answers, and I was tired of beating myself up for that. I had to move forward. Thankfully, I had something to look forward to. Iris. Each day with her was a gift, and I didn't want to waste a single one of them. The better news the teller had given me was that I had enough money to live like the blooming King of England. Not that I had any desire for that. In fact, the idea of pomp and parade made me want to tell someone to crack off. There was peace in knowing I was financially secure, and there was some fear. Peace that I could provide for myself and not have to rush out to get a job. I couldn't even imagine how that interview would go. I probably had a resume somewhere, but it wasn't easily accessible on my laptop, since I had yet to remember the password to log in. Which all added up to an uneasy feeling about where the money came from. It looped through my thoughts. I might be a thief. If I was a darn good one. I grinned, feeling like a pirate. Not that I condoned illegal activity, just. I kind of liked the sense of being a rebel. More than anything, I was ready for some answers, and Iris's mom said she had them. We were all meeting at the cafe near Iris's building during her lunch hour to go over things. No matter how bad the news, I needed Iris there. She brought a sense of calm with her, as if she carried it around in her pocket. I, on the other hand, could panic at the sound of a car horn. The doctor said that was normal, considering the nature of my accident. I tried to feel normal, but shaking before I crossed the street didn't help. The rumbling of car engines, the squealing of brakes, and the chirping of the crosswalk had me on edge. I had the feeling that I was a brave person, someone who took risks in life. Being cautious in a little thing like crossing the street was driving me crazy. I needed to do something bigger than ride my bike through a park. Right now, I felt brave for meeting with Iris and Gloria. Gloria promised she had information on me, suggesting that I'd be gobsmacked. I could turn the key to my past in 20 minutes or less. The thought spurred me to lengthen my stride and dodge the dog walker with an ancient poodle meandering along in front of me. I entered the cafe and searched for my lady. The tables were dark brown and the booths a light blue. The decor was simple with a few cityscape images in black and white on the walls. There was nothing special here except the fish and chips. I spied Iris at a corner booth. Sun from the window lit up her soft skin, and I itched to be next to her, to caress her cheek with mine before connecting our lips. Her leg bounced, and she sucked down water like she'd run 10 miles. If she was that worried about what we'd find, then she was carrying my load. I didn't deserve a woman like that, but I'd gotten her, and I planned to keep her. Good afternoon. I slid into the booth next to Iris and put my hand on her knee to stop the bouncing. All right, love. She visibly relaxed at my touch, and my heart lifted knowing I had the same effect on her that she had on me. We were good together. I didn't doubt that for a second. So why did it feel like we were about to have the rug yanked out from underneath us? Gloria clutched a thick file to her chest, hugging it like her long-lost cat. We all said hello, and Iris told me she'd ordered for me. I don't think I can eat, love. My system is rubbish thinking your mom knows more about me than I do. I twirled the ice in my glass with the straw. Gloria twittered. Believe me, I like you all the more for it. I smiled. She was a card, that one. Let's get this over with. The collar on my shirt suddenly felt like it was a size too small, and my own skin felt like a lie. It was the strangest thing to sit across from this wonderful older woman and have her introduce me to myself. Gloria put the folder on the table and opened it. I swore I could hear the sands of time blow across the table. Let me just start by saying that everything here is public record. I didn't find anything you couldn't have found yourself. Even so, it was such an honor to be trusted with your search. Thank you, dear boy. She reached across and patted my hand. The touch was motherly and comforting. Gloria had a way about her that set people at ease. I could tell she'd enjoyed herself the last 2 weeks as she dived into my life. I didn't know what to trust online and what not to. I'm thankful for your expertise. I swore I'd buy her the biggest bouquet of flowers I could get from the florist on the corner. Amateur, Iris teased her mom, bringing a smile to Gloria's face. Gloria became all business as she pulled out a pair of reading glasses and slipped them on. Let's start at the beginning. Here's your birth certificate. I nodded, my throat so tight it was hard to breathe as I looked down at the paper. My parents' names were there in black and white. It was beautiful to see them. My father was Reginald Piper the V, which I'd guessed since I was the 6. My mom's name was Poppy. I turned to smile at Iris. It's a pretty name. She leaned into me. It's beautiful. I grinned as I faced Gloria. So far, so good. Gloria took a deep breath. Your parents divorced when you were 3. She put the divorce certificate on the table. I stared down at it, wondering what kind of a home I'd grown up in. What had happened to bring Reginald and Poppy together and then break them up so quickly? A whirlwind romance? An unwanted pregnancy? Or just life? So far, I had a lot more questions than answers. Gloria continued. Your parents shared custody until you were 16, and then you opted out of visiting your father, the Earl. Earl? I asked. She tapped a line on my birth certificate. You're royal. An Earl. You stand to inherit when your father passes. Some land and the title. She waved her hand. It's all very British. I touched the edge of the divorce agreement. I wonder if I knew the princes growing up? I glanced up to see both women with the same worry lines across their foreheads. Perhaps we attended primary school together, I offered. Gloria began shuffling through papers as if looking for the answer. I don't know, I'd accidentally thrown off her professional demeanor. She was giving me so much, had spent her time to find the truth, and I flustered her in the middle of her presentation. I hurried to ease her off the ledge of panic. I'm sorry. It's not important. I saw a tabloid headline about the royal baby this morning, and it popped into my noggin. I tapped my temple. I'll try to keep the random thoughts to myself. Iris rubbed my arm. This is about you, so please random away. I grinned, motioning for Gloria to continue. She chewed her lip. I dug up a phone number for your father in case you wanted to contact him. I stared at the handwritten slip of lined paper, a sense of dread wrapping its long, wispy fingers around my heart. I shoved the paper to the side of the table, as far away from me as possible. Another time, I told the ladies, "I want all you've got before I start digging in." They exchanged looks. Iris rubbed her lips together. Gloria adjusted her watch. "Shall we crack on?" I encouraged. Gloria adjusted her glasses and her demeanor at the same time. "Of course. If you're ready, I'm ready." She went from worried to excited, and I found myself catching her excitement. This is where it gets really interesting. Iris and I leaned forward at the same time. We turned to look at each other and laughed. "I think you've got us hooked, Mom." She smiled in response to Iris's comment and then focused on me. "You, my dear boy, are an inventor." A thick stack of papers from the patent office was laid in front of my nose. I began flipping through them, scanning the legal jargon. "You created a layout for a computer board that allowed for smaller pieces of some kind. I didn't understand it all. It's being used in laptops across the world. You have your own Wikipedia page." I blinked. "Seriously?" I read through the paragraph in front of me, understanding the computer speak and legalese. "I get this stuff." I pointed to the paper. Turning to Iris, I offered her an apologetic half smile. "I'm sorry. I'm a total nerd, as you Americans would say." She shoved my shoulder. "Stop. You're adorable." I warmed under her admiring gaze. She wasn't fazed by anything she'd heard yet. There were still several papers in Pandora's folder. I hoped that, by the end of this meet and greet, Iris still looked at me that way. Our server brought our meals, and we took a moment to get situated before continuing on. I drizzled tartar sauce over my fish and chips, using the extra ramekin of it to really slather it on thick. Iris teased me with a gagging face before digging into her turkey sandwich with avocado. Gloria took tiny forkfuls of her pasta salad so she could swallow quickly and keep talking. "You wrote a pretty impressive algorithm that you grew a company around. It covers 3 continents, which blows my mind." Gloria jumped back into discussing my life, though it felt more like a list of awards and accomplishments I didn't deserve. "You sold the company the day you were in the accident." Iris startled. "That's why no one came looking for you. It was your last day at work." She shook her head. Zelda was right. I smirked. She'd told me all about her and Zelda's excuses for why I hadn't shown up the day after that kiss. She was right about some of it. "I'm not homeless." Gloria snorted. "Not hardly. Your net worth is astounding." She laid everything else out in front of me. I had stocks, bonds, a sailboat, a plane parked in some hangar. Wow. I had no idea. I turned to Iris, hoping to gauge her reaction to the news. After the bank trip this morning, I knew I was wealthy, but I wasn't sure how she was going to react. And I thought I was lucky to find a bike in my storage unit. This is so much more. Iris drummed her fingers on the table. "I wonder what you were going to do with the rest of your life after selling the company." I snapped up the boat's title. "Apparently Sail Somewhere." I'd bought this 3 days before. Didn't I tell you about it? Buying a boat and taking off seemed like something I would talk to a girlfriend about. No, she looked down at her hands, and I heard Gloria's foot connect with Iris's shin. They exchanged wide-eyed warning looks. I glanced back and forth between them. There was something they weren't telling me. Iris won the silent battle of wills, and Gloria cleared her face of all discord between her and her daughter before speaking to me. "What do you want to do now?" Gloria asked before I could question them about the under-the-table conversation. "You can climb aboard that boat and go." This time, it was Iris who kicked Gloria's shin. I shoved some chips around my plate, ignoring their silent banter. I felt restless, and I didn't know why. Maybe a part of my brain remembered I was supposed to be on an adventure. I thought back to the last few weeks, the completeness I'd found in living a quiet life with Iris among the skyscrapers and go-getters. I didn't want to give that up. And I didn't have a driving need to prove myself in the world. Although, I wouldn't mind traveling. But I'm not sure about sailing. It's not calling to me. Maybe I was just going to live on the beach for a while. Iris cocked her head, considering me. I wished I could read her mind. "Do you like to travel?" I asked her. She glanced quickly away. "I do. But I don't get many opportunities. 2 weeks vacation isn't much time." She lifted her hands and held them out as if showing off a prize. I got the feeling she was putting up a front, pretending to be happy when she was really noticing the differences in our lifestyles. I didn't care about all that, and I didn't want her to either. I reached for her hand and threaded our fingers together. Well, Gloria brushed her palms together. I think my work here is done for now. If you have any questions, you call me, you hear? She handed me her card. I glanced down to read it. Gloria Hartley, amateur genealogist. I grinned. Holding her phone number gave me a sense of being in the right place at the right time. I will. I stood up as she did and hugged her. She patted my back. You're a good man, Reggie. Nothing on paper could change that. She patted my cheek before waving at Iris and walking out. Iris blew her a kiss. I stretched my arms above my head. My whole life is right here. I waved my arm over the table. I can't believe she found all this. She's always been nosy, Iris teased as she patted the seat next to her. Now she's trying to make a living at it. I grinned as I sat down, throwing my arm across the back of the booth. It's so easy to be with you. How so? She took a final bite of her food and then shoved the plate next to the window. It's more than the whole I remember our kiss thing. I feel like we really rub along great together. Like I can be me and you can be you, and we don't have to try to impress each other. She made a face. I think that's called settling into a relationship. Is that a bad thing? She sipped her soda. Usually, it means you're taking the relationship for granted and stopped being romantic. Her eyes cut to the paperwork. In your case, my mom did all the impressing. She wasn't upset at the state of things between us, but I was. I wanted her to feel special, to be romanced. I paused. I don't think that's what's happening here. No? I took her hand and pressed it over my chest. My heart pounded at its normal rhythm, and then I leaned in to kiss her neck, and it took off, running through fields of clovers and honey. I don't take this feeling for granted, I whispered against her skin. She shivered, and I kissed her warm skin once, twice, and then brushed my cheek against hers. I'm falling in love with you, Iris. Me too. I pulled back and met her gaze. You're falling in love with you? She bumped my chest with her shoulder. No, you goof. I'm falling in love with you. Her eyebrows crinkled, and she pulled slightly away. Looking around, she reached for the slip of paper with my dad's number. Just like always with Iris, it was 2 steps closer and then 1 step back. I wanted to just move forward with her, but she had reservations that I couldn't seem to pin down. Do you, want to see if this is your dad's number? She asked. I relaxed my hold on her. We should have been basking in wonderful kisses and feeling the sunshine warm us through the window after a declaration of love, but she was deflecting. Sure, she'd said the words, but I didn't feel them. I also didn't feel like calling my father. I have an internal warning sign that blinks every time I look at that paper. I pulled my arm out from around her and hunched my shoulders as I leaned over my plate to finish the meal. It had gone cold and the grease tasted stale, so I shoved it aside. What if I called him? She offered. I met her questioning gaze. Was she after answers? Was that why she held back her love? She didn't want to fall for me until she knew my past? Go right ahead, love. I didn't have anything to hide that I knew of. If she needed answers, we might as well find them. Chapter 12. Iris. Reggie loved me. Well, he was falling in love with me, but same difference, right? He loved me, and I was a liar. I had the bump on my shin to prove it, thanks to my mother. I had to come clean, but that was so hard to do when he was more and more attached. I mean, when was it ever a good time to break a man's heart? He'd come a long way in the 3 weeks since he'd popped back into my life, but he was still attached. I wasn't sure how much of that attachment was the obsession he'd had from the memory of our elevator kiss, and how much of it was from the feelings growing between us. When I'd told him I was falling in love with him, it was true. My feelings had gone from the infatuation and monster crush stage to something deeper. The more time we spent together, the harder I fell. If I didn't reveal everything soon, one or both of us were going to get our hearts ripped out. I looked over his hunched form and went back to the thought that his body, muscles, cells, and bones remembered things his brain didn't. It was almost like he didn't like the man. If the thought of his father caused him to curl in on himself, what would we find on the other end of this call? I reached for the phone number and pulled out my cell. Maybe it was all in the past, and his dad was waiting by the phone for his long-lost son to reconnect. We wouldn't know unless we called. But everything about Reggie's physical appearance said he wanted nothing to do with anyone in England, let alone the man who had given him his name. He'd hunched over his plate like a hungry teenager and picked at his food like a middle-aged woman on a no-sugar cleanse. "We don't have to call," I offered. Forcing him into this wasn't going to do anyone any good. Except maybe his dad, if he cared about Reggie. The divorce and Reggie opting out of joint custody weren't good signs. Reggie leaned back, keeping his forearms on the table and creating a cage. "Do it. Let's get this over with. Do you think you and your dad get along?" I asked casually as I dialed the international number. He blew out a breath. "I have a rock sitting right here." He made a fist over his sternum. I glanced at his plate. That could have been the grease. He burst out a laugh. "I didn't think of that." I hooked my arm around his and laid my head on his shoulder. "Actually, I think you're right. It probably means that you're dreading talking to him. We can wait." "No. I want to get this over with." He picked up a picture of his mother from her obit. He had her straight nose and gray eyes. She was pretty, and the filter used for the image made her all soft. She looked like someone I would have liked to know. "What do you feel when you look at her?" I wondered out loud. He considered her face. "Peace." He tipped his head so it rested on mine. "I guess that's a sign that I came to terms with her passing." "Probably." He tapped my phone. "Call." Before I decide otherwise. I sat up and pressed the button to put the call through. I might be a big city girl, but that didn't mean I had a lot of reasons to call overseas. I pulled the phone slightly away from my mouth. "I feel so glamorous calling the UK." He smirked. "I'll take you there one day." My stomach dropped out. He'd take me if we survived the confessional I had planned. "Sure." A woman picked up on the other end. "Piper Residence." I grabbed Reggie's forearm. "Hello, this is Iris Hartley calling from America," I blathered. Reggie smiled, his eyes warming like he thought it was so cute that I used my country as an introductory point. Whatever. I could be upper crust. "I'm trying to locate Reginald Piper the V on behalf of his son, Reggie." There was a sharp intake of breath, and then she said, "I'm putting you on hold." The line went quiet. I set the phone on the table and hit the speaker button so I didn't have to hold it to my ear. I turned toward Reggie, expecting to be on hold for a while and wondering what this was going to do to my phone bill, but I only had a second before a man barked at me. "Who is this?" Reggie shrank back. By his reaction, I gathered this was his father. "Mr. Piper?" "It's Lord Piper," he instructed me. My cheeks heated with shame he couldn't see through the phone, thank goodness. "My lord." I glanced at Reggie for confirmation that I'd used the right title. He nodded, so I pressed on. "I'm calling because your son was in an accident." "Is he dead?" I blinked, shocked at the uncaring tone in his voice. It was almost as if he hoped Reggie had passed on. "No, sir." He grunted, and I guessed that I'd committed another unforgivable English sin of etiquette. "He's after my money then." My mouth fell open. Reggie gently lifted it back in place. His eyes were full of warmth and gratitude. A surge of protectiveness filled me, and I sat up straighter, adding a no-nonsense briskness to my tone. "My lord, Reggie was in an accident. He has amnesia and doesn't remember anything that happened before 3.5 months ago." I paused, waiting for some sort of reaction. "He may not remember, but I do. Tell him not to call again." The line clicked and my screen went dark. "Well, I never." I fumed. I poked the screen a few times, wishing I could poke the old man at the other end of that call. He has no right to dismiss you like that. I have half a mind to fly over there and give him what for. I glanced over to find Reggie with his hand over his mouth, stifling his laughter. "What's so funny? The man is a brute. Maybe you were adopted." I began sorting through the paperwork, looking for an adoption sheet. Reggie wrapped me in his wonderful arms and pulled me against his chest, trapping me against him. I didn't mind. I loved his strength, and when he used it to hold me close, it was an incredible feeling. "I don't need the old codger, not when I have you." He kissed my hair. "You are all the family I need in this world." I couldn't ask for a better woman. Almost every part of me wanted to melt against him. I did. but my conscience screamed and fought to be let out of the box I'd stuffed her into. I put my hands on his chest and pushed back slightly. "Reggie," I began, my body going numb in anticipation for the pain I was about to inflict on both of us. "This whole day has been about finding out who you are, and I have a big piece of you that I've been holding back." "You do?" His arms relaxed, and I scooted back. I traced the buttons on his shirt, wanting to memorize every inch of him. "I should have told you right from the very start, but you were so wonderful." He reached out and lifted my chin, giving him full view of the tears gathering on my lashes. "And that was a problem?" "It is, because I'm a horrible person." He opened his mouth, but I put my finger on his lips. "We aren't a couple." He kissed my finger. "I remember asking you to be my girlfriend." "No. I mean, we weren't a couple, before the accident. The elevator kiss you remember was the first time you kissed me, but I didn't even know your name." "I kissed a stranger?" He rubbed his jaw as he tried to put the puzzle pieces together. "No. I mean, we flirted all the time in the elevator. Your company was a couple floors above mine, and we'd leave the building at the same time." I gave a scoffing laugh. "That's not totally true either. A lot of times, I'd wait for the elevator with you in it. I'm sure everyone on the floors above me thought I was the most forgetful person on the planet. The doors would open, and if you weren't there, I'd say, 'Go on ahead, I forgot my phone,' or some other dumb excuse." I was rambling, but the truth couldn't be held back any longer. His brows came together and then lowered. "Why are you telling me this?" His question sounded like an accusation. "Because I'm falling in love with you, and it's not fair to lead you on, believing one thing when the truth is something else." I waved my hand over the table. "You want to know who you are, and I couldn't let you believe you loved me before when you didn't." I glanced down at my hands, twisting them together. "You should have the option to love me, not feel stuck." I couldn't stand the weight of his gaze on me any longer. I pushed against him, and he let me out of the booth. I hurried to gather my things and put my purse over my shoulder. "Iris, don't go," he asked, his voice deep and husky and full of a vulnerability that yanked at my heart. I stared at his birth certificate. "The old you didn't want me." I don't know why, but he had reasons. Maybe because he was off to Florida to sail around the world, or because he wanted to be free to adventure, or because I'm not highbrow enough. He jerked his chin back as if I'd smacked him. Really, there was no reason to believe Reggie was a snob. He'd been nothing but accepting of me and my mom. But that didn't mean he didn't used to be snobby. "You have a lot to figure out, and I don't want you to feel trapped." I touched his cheek. It was a selfish move. One more touch to hold me over for the rest of my life. "I'm so sorry I lied, Reggie. I really, truly am." "Iris, I don't remember those reasons." I bit my lip. "But you will. One day it will all come back to you, and you'll look at me as a trap, a woman who sank her hooks into you when you were at your lowest and didn't let go. You'll resent my love and me for not telling you all this." I turned and hurried out. "Iris," he called behind me. I pressed through a big group in black suits coming through the door, unable to look Reggie in the eye. I made it back to the office, but lost it in the elevator. I was a blubbering mess, and I needed my best friend. I sent her a text and sniffed loudly, annoying everyone who got on with me. When the door slid open on the 35th floor, Zelda was there to usher me to my office and feed me a steady supply of tissues. "You did the right thing." She patted my back. I gulped. Bending over and hugging myself was the only way to keep from slumping to the floor. Then why does it hurt so bad? I'd always been told that doing the right thing was supposed to feel good, that it brought release. The truth shall set you free and all that. But I didn't have any of those feelings. I didn't feel free. I felt ground into the dirt. There was no release. The moment I'd turned my back on Reggie, a band had tightened around my chest, making it impossible to breathe. How can I go on living without him if I can't even breathe right? "Oh, honey." She side-hugged me. "Just let it hurt for a while. It's the only way through." I nodded, shuddering with another sob. I might be able to face my maker with a clear conscience, but losing Reggie was my own version of hell. I wasn't going to get over this one. I knew it, and I think Zelda knew it, because she didn't try to talk me into feeling better. Some heartbreaks left their scars on the heart. This one took my whole heart with it. Chapter 13. Reggie. I woke up the morning after Iris broke up with me feeling like I'd been dropped on a deserted island without even a crab to keep me company. There wasn't a part of me that didn't feel her absence. For as long as I could remember, she'd been a part of my life. That sounded corny, but it was the literal truth, so I allowed myself to wallow in that for a while. Even though I wasn't hungry, I made myself an omelet, enjoying the process of cutting vegetables into tiny pieces. I didn't know if it had always been this way, but I liked working with food. There was a science to it, a precision that brought peace when it was done right. And then there was the reward of having something delicious to eat at the end of the work that was great too. I took 3 bites and stuffed the rest in the fridge, knowing I wouldn't heat it up later, because I just couldn't eat. I looked around my empty apartment and rubbed the chill off my arms. It never felt like the space was cold when Iris was here. She was warm summer breezes and blanket snuggles all rolled into one. I glanced at the couch, where we'd shared more cuddles than I could count. I couldn't stay here. I grabbed my wallet and headed out to walk. Hopefully, I would clear my head and my heart, though I doubted either was possible. I didn't pay attention to much except the streetlights. I still had a fear of crossing the street. Part of me felt like that was ridiculous. A grown man should not be afraid of a crosswalk. But I gave myself some slack on it today, because I was a mess in every other way too. The counselor said it was okay to have fears as long as we didn't let them rule our choices in life. I chose to walk New York like every other citizen, even if I was the only one cringing when the lights changed. My desire to outrun Iris brought me to the park she liked to visit, the one where she and her mum met for ice cream. Great. I've become a stalker. I looked around, hoping to see her but also dreading the moment our eyes would make contact. How would I explain being here? Somehow, I didn't think that telling her I was desperate to see her blue eyes sparkle would go over that well. I sat on a bench, across from the ice cream cart guy in his red and white striped shirt, and dropped my head into my hands. I don't know how long I sat there, in a stupor and numb, but it was a while. Someone tapped my shoulder, and I looked up, half expecting a police officer to tell me to move along. Instead, I found Gloria holding 2 ice cream cones and wearing a tentative smile. Chocolate. She lifted the brown cone. I nodded, taking it from her out of politeness, though I had no intention of actually eating it. She settled next to me, her purse in her lap, and started licking her ice cream. We watched the kids at the playground across the way for a while without saying a word. Eventually, I had to lick the treat or I'd end up with sticky hands. It tasted wooden and dead, just like my heart felt. Gloria broke the silence with a pat on my knee, asking, "How are you holding up, sport? Iris told you?" She didn't have to answer, because obviously Iris had mentioned the breakup. Gloria swiped a pathetic paper napkin across her lips. "I talked to her last night. How is she?" That was a question I really wanted answered. As much as it gutted me to watch her walk away, I understood her motivation. If I'd been an idiot in my former life, I couldn't expect her to think that guy wouldn't show up again. That's what all of the research and digging were all about, trying to bring that guy back from the dead. The longer I lived without him and the baggage he carried from a horrible father and the loss of a mother, not to mention the things I didn't know about, the less I wanted him to return. Gloria drew in a deep breath. She's struggling. It should make me feel better to hear that, but it doesn't. I glanced at my watch. It was only 3. Maybe I should call her tonight. Gloria pressed her lips together and shook her head. No, she has a point. You knew her for 5 months before the accident, and you didn't ask her out. There had to be a reason. But those reasons, whatever they were, don't exist anymore, I argued back, grateful to finally get my thoughts out in the open. They don't now. I know what you're saying, and it's a possibility that I could get my memories back and things could change. But I thought she knew me enough to know that I'm a good guy. I hit my hand to my chest hard enough that I could feel the thud. It was the first thing I'd felt all day. Boulders, I hated being numb. Without Iris and her love, nothing else got through to me. Even if I remembered who I was, I wouldn't forget her. Not even amnesia could make that happen. I remembered the kiss. It made such an impression on me that it stayed in my head when everything else went away. That has to mean something. I dropped my chin. It means everything to me. Gloria patted my knee. I'm so sorry, Reggie. I leaned against her, drawing all the motherly support I could. I was going to make you my mother-in-law, I confessed. The more I thought about what I'd lost along with Iris, the worse I felt. She didn't have a big family, but the two of them were tight and loving. Gloria had gone out of her way to help me out. I wanted people like these in my life. She immediately threw her arms around me and squished me to her like a kindergartner. I would have kept you too. She sniffed, and I sat up to find her using the napkin to wipe her eyes. What am I going to do? I took a large bite out of the ice cream and let it trickle down my throat. I need to prove to her that I'm not the same guy I was and that I want her now and forever. I'm not going to change my mind. She's my girl. Gloria studied the ground. She needs time. Time to trust you and herself. I think she's pretty shaken up over falling for you so fast. That's a bad thing? It is, because she knew it wasn't based on reality. Honey, just give her some time to see who you are. I scrubbed my face. She was what made getting up each day an event. Knowing I'd see her was a huge motivator. You need a hobby. I scoffed. I need a life. That's not a problem. She adjusted her arms over her purse. Come on, think. What interests you? I thought back to the past few weeks and the things I'd done. I like biking. But that's not enough to build a future on. I get computer speak and coding and all that. I've dabbled with creating a few apps, but they're small time. Nothing to hold my interest for long. Gloria encouraged me to continue. She watched the children play, keeping her attention on them and giving me room to work through things without pressure. I want to be useful. I sat back. The phrase was like highlighting something I'd felt since I'd woken up in the hospital. I'd finally been able to identify it. The restlessness wasn't about sailing the oceans or seeing the world. It was a need to help people. How would you go about doing that? I rubbed my hands together. I'm not sure, but I'm going to find a way. Wonderful. Gloria stood up and tossed her crumpled napkin into the trash. Our cones were long gone, and I had no idea I'd finished mine because I'd been so deep in thought. Let me know how I can help. I smiled as I stood up and offered her a hug. She hugged me back, patting my back in the process. Don't lose hope. Things always seem to work out the way they should. I nodded. I wish you were my mom. I could use you in my corner. She laughed lightly. Call me anytime. Really. I excel at mothering and I can't get enough of it. I pictured her coming into my apartment and lecturing me over leaving the kitchen such a mess. Was it weird that I wanted that? I will. I waved as she headed off down the path. I would call her in a couple of days and check in. The park was busy with the after-school crowd. A few teens gathered, staring at their phones. I didn't belong to anyone, not even a pack of mates to pal around with, and it stung. The sky was clear, but I couldn't find the sun for all the buildings towering over my head. I liked the feeling of the city, the pulse, and the vast amounts of entertainment. There was always something to do if I wanted it. Stuffing my hands into my pockets, I noted the sense of hope in my chest that hadn't been there when I'd plunked down on the bench. Time. Time I could give Iris. But I wasn't going to leave her completely alone either. I needed to make contact. I needed her to know that I thought about her, that I wanted her. Pulling out my phone, I agonized over a text. I finally decided on, please know that wherever you are, I'm loving you. I hoped it didn't come across as pleading and pathetic or even desperate. I just didn't want her to go a day without knowing that I loved her. Time and love. It seemed like the right combination. Chapter 14. 2 weeks later. Iris. I finished up the presentation just as my phone pinged indicating I had a text. My heart skipped a beat, and I almost didn't log out of Zoom before I checked it. My heart lifted for the first time that day. It seemed like I'd held my breath until I heard that ding. Reggie, I think I found my purpose. Besides loving you, of course. I'm going to create an app that helps people strengthen their memories. I've seen what's on the market, and I think I can do better. Still loving you. I hugged my phone and let out a sigh. Reggie? Zelda asked as she gathered up her folders. I'd forgotten I wasn't alone in the conference room. That's how focused I was on Reggie's daily text. He had a way of becoming my whole universe with one ding. I might be an addict, needing a hit. Or I was still as in love with him as I had been the day I'd said goodbye. Maybe more. Absence makes the heart grow fonder and all that jazz. Zelda stopped on her way out to stand next to me. You going to answer him this time? I shook my head. I can't. If I give in once, I won't be able to stop myself. It's cold turkey or I'm all in. There's no middle ground. Is it so bad to love him? I tipped my head up and met her cocoa brown eyes. It is if he stops loving me one day. Her posture melted into one of pity. Her shoulders hunched and she tipped her head to the side, letting out a soft grunt. I wish there was a way. Maybe. I turned so I faced her fully. You're the one who said telling him was the right thing to do. You said I was right. I was so on the fence about all this. On the one hand, I knew the risk, and it was too big to just put it in the corner and ignore. If I loved him fully, gave my life to him, I'd be torn in two when the day came that he said goodbye. I wished I knew why he hadn't wanted to be with me before. If only I had that answer. But it was locked away inside his head and the keys were lost. It all felt so hopeless. On the other hand, he said he loved me. He told me every day in text, and he hadn't cut me out of his life like I so deserved. That said something, didn't it? He needed to know the truth. Zelda picked up my phone. But he's still trying. That has to count for something. I bit my lip. It does. I'm just not sure if what he feels now is stronger than what he felt then. How will you know if you don't answer him? I nodded. I'll think about it. That was a promise I could make. I'd thought about little else. Thankfully, the presentation today was one of our typical sales meetings with a new customer. I could breeze through with my eyes closed. Except that when I closed my eyes, I only saw Reggie. My heart and my determination were in a tug-of-war, and my heart lost ground daily. I wanted to believe the things Reggie texted. I was scared. Scared of handing him my future, my heart, my adoration, and then losing it all. I packed up my laptop and went back to my desk. If an answer hadn't popped up as I'd obsessed over this for the last 2 weeks, then it wasn't going to pop up now. Work would keep me busy for a while. Maybe I could work until I was too tired to think, and then I could sleep. At least in my dreams, Reggie and I were together, and everything was beautiful. At least then, it all made sense. Because when I was awake, the world was off-center, and I stumbled my way through each day. I was officially a hot mess. Chapter 15. 2 weeks later. Reggie. Gloria. I called from across the busy cafe as I waved her down. I'd invited her to lunch to celebrate the app I'd mapped out. It was a big deal to have it this far, and I knew it was going to help a lot of people, from dementia patients to college students trying to cram for finals. She hugged her purse to her chest like a tourist afraid of being mugged as she squeezed between tables and customers to get to me. The place was hot. Any place to eat in the theater district was packed during lunch. I'd been eating out once a day while working on my project. I missed the time in the kitchen, but I had to do what I had to do to move forward. I sat down and cleared my stacks of papers off the table. I'd come early to reserve a seat and answer emails, and planned to tip the waitress heavily for the inconvenience. Turned out I had a few good contacts in the biz who were more than happy to help with a new endeavor. My lawyer was especially pleased to hear from me. After checking his bill, I couldn't blame him for his exuberance. The first person I'd told about all this was Iris. In a text. There wasn't anyone on the planet I wanted to share the news with more than her. She read my texts, I got notices that they'd gone through. But she hadn't responded. Because of that, I picked my second favorite person to celebrate with today. Let me look at you. Gloria grabbed my chin and turned my face toward her so she could give me the once-over. You have good color in your cheeks and a brightness in your eyes. I'd say work agrees with you. I laughed and motioned for her to join me in the booth. I have to agree. I like having a purpose. She nodded once, as if stamping her approval on my statement, and then sat down across from me. So, you turned in your assignment. Grinning, I signaled to the server that we were ready to order. I handed it over to another programmer to tear apart, so yes. Once he's done, I'd have to go back in and rework sections. Then it will go back to him. We'll repeat the process until the app works. Then we need a designer to make it pretty. There's still a lot to do, but getting the alpha version done is big. I have no idea what that means, but I'm proud of you anyway. She beamed across from me. She was such a mom. That's what I liked about spending time with her. She was all support and honest answers and a great addition to my life. Seeing how easily I responded to her care, I had to wonder about my own mom. We paused to order, and then I asked, "Did you find anything this week?" "I did." She reached into her cavernous purse and pulled out one of her blue files. Gloria had offered to search for more living relatives of mine. They couldn't all hate me as much as my father. Someone had to have answers and possibly pictures from my childhood. "You have two aunts on your mom's side. One is in Italy and the other in California." I found numbers, but I didn't call them. "I figured you'd want to do that." "I do." After my father had hung up on Iris, I decided I should be the one to take the brunt of things. It was a good decision, because my English relatives were not happy to hear from me. Each of them had plenty to say, but when I explained that I didn't remember anything prior to 4 months ago, they called me everything from a liar to a barnyard animal, throwing in as many English curse words as they could. I was actually impressed with their vernacular. Grandmother didn't appreciate me pointing that out. So I'd asked Gloria to look into my mother's side. I gathered from the custody papers that I preferred them anyway. "Thanks. I'll start calling today and let you know how it goes." She smiled as our server put plates in front of us. As soon as the server was gone, I asked the question that had burned my tongue since Gloria had sat down. "How's Iris?" I peppered my sandwich and did my best not to look too interested in the question. Gloria's fork froze on the way to her mouth. She caught herself and pretended like she was unconcerned with my question. It was quite the dance we had going on, hiding our real feelings on the subject, me with my undying, unrequited love, and Gloria with her determination to stay neutral. She said she loved us both too much to get between us. "She's working a lot. I think she's lost weight." My head snapped up. She didn't have any to lose. Iris was slim-figured, like a ballerina. I loved her grace and poise, the elegant sweep of her long neck and the bone structure in her face. Mum flapped a hand. "I don't think she's dying, but she's not taking care of herself." Because I should be taking care of her, I grumbled into my steak sandwich. I crunched down on a chip. "Don't get mopey. She's fine. I only mention it because I know she's still thinking of you." She put her hands in her lap and looked down at them. "I don't want you to lose hope." "I haven't." Her head came up. "But it's been a month." I chomped another chip. "A month is nothing. Talk to me in a year." Gloria's face wrinkled like she'd bitten into a sour pickle. "If it takes her that long, you have my permission to find another woman." I laughed. "Not going to happen. Iris is the one for me." I winked. That settled. I picked up my sandwich and took a big bite. "How are things going with your second genealogical client?" The tension in her back loosened, and she picked up her fork again. "Second." I hooked my thumb toward my chest. "I'm your first. Anyone else will come in second." She laughed. "Fine. It's going great. We've been able to trace her family back to the Netherlands. She's thrilled that she could have Viking blood coursing through her veins." We chatted about the process of finding dead relatives. Sorting through parish records and old family Bibles wasn't my idea of a good time, but Gloria was fascinated with the process. Her enthusiasm made listening about all of it enjoyable. "When you want to travel and see some of these records in person, let me know," I offered. "Why?" "I'll foot the bill." I had more money than I could spend in a lifetime, and I desperately wanted it to do some good. "What?" "No, I couldn't." "Sure, you could." The woman allowed me into her life when I had no one. No matter what happened, I owed her. But it was more than that. I honestly felt like she was family, and I'd do anything for family. "I insist." Gloria clamped her hand over her mouth. "Well, I don't know if that will ever happen, but I'm feeling crazy enough that I might just take you up on that." "I hope you do." We finished eating and catching up. As much as I loved my time with Gloria, my heart ached for Iris and her infectious smile, soft body, and hair that smelled like vanilla. By the time she left, all I could think about was her daughter. I hadn't sent my text for the day, so I pulled out my phone and considered my words carefully. Iris losing weight worried me to no end. Gloria wouldn't have mentioned it if it wasn't a concern for her too. Maybe it was time to push my luck to push her. "Not a moment goes by that you're not in my thoughts. I'd like to see you again." I waited for the notification that she'd read it. Then I waited a few more minutes for a response. Nothing. Maybe I'd pushed too fast. Despite my claim that I could wait a year, I wasn't a patient man. I was a man of action, and action I would take. Chapter 16. Iris. I'd like to see you again. The words were like warm marshmallows on a summer night with a blanket of stars above and a handsome man, with an English accent, to snuggle up to. I was so strong. I'd stuck to my guns and refused to fall into his waiting arms. I wasn't being selfish. Trust me, if I was going to get what I wanted, it would be Reggie and all his luscious kisses. This must be true love, because I was constantly thinking of him and what would be best for his growth, his life, his future. He needed time to find himself, to get his feet under him, to realize he didn't want me. The whole time I was being Iron Woman, he showered me with compliments, included me in his plans, and told me he loved me. It was like swimming upstream in a formal gown to stay away from him. I was strong. At least, that's what I told myself. He's not human. I tossed my phone into my purse and headed for the elevators. Anyone else would have given up by now. I grinned. There was something amazing about knowing a man was willing to fight for me, even if the only person he was fighting was me. Still, his perseverance and overall sweetness were points in his favor. Big points. Huge points. Points that made staying away from him seem small and insignificant in the grand scheme of things. I pressed the button and waited for the elevator. I should take the stairs, but I was tired and worn out from trying to resist the world's most irresistible man. If my desire for him had decreased even a little over the last 4 weeks, I might not be weak in the knees at a text. As it was, I lived for the moment my phone tinged. He'd called me his lifeline, but those texts were all that kept me going. The doors opened and I automatically stepped inside, not paying attention to my elevator mates. Going down, love? I blinked and lifted my eyes, blinking again as I tried to take in Reggie. Dang, he looked so good. He had some tan, which meant he'd been on his bike. And he smelled like him, body wash and wind and peppermint. My ability to hold myself up was compromised. Keeping him at arm's length over text was one thing, but an in-person attempt was impossible. I was crumbling to bits by the second. Wah! He pressed the button to close the doors and then leaned against them, blocking my way. I've been riding this thing for 30 minutes. I thought I'd missed you. His eyes drank me in, and I jumped right into his gaze as if it were a swimming pool in the middle of the desert. You're here was all I could get out, all I could think. My brain was on a loop, and all it noticed was that we were in the same 4x4 foot space. Alone. My hands tingled, anxious to touch him. I'm here. You're here. He touched my cheek as if he could hardly believe I was real. I suddenly remembered what I'd looked like in the mirror that morning. Raccoon eyes, messy bun, no mascara. I'm a fright. I touched my hair. You're perfect. He stepped closer, and I didn't move away. I wanted him in my space, wanted it more than I wanted food or anything. Reggie. I pleaded with him not to make me love him with that word. He stepped closer, our shoes touching. Tears filled my eyes and blurred my vision. Don't cry, love. He brushed off my cheeks with the pads of his thumbs, leaving behind a trail of warmth and tingles. I've missed you. He kissed my forehead, and my eyes fell shut from the relief of feeling his lips on my skin. Heat pooled in my lower belly and slowly spiraled through my limbs. I came alive. Without him, I'd been dead, lifeless, my body nothing more than a shell, my spirit sagging. My arms came up and wrapped around his neck, holding on. I missed you too, I admitted. With those words came relief, and the floodgates opened. I buried my face in the crook of his neck, sobbing with the release of all that I'd held in and the spring of joy overflowing my chest. It was such a strange combination of emotions. He pulled me closer, holding me to him as if he could absorb my emotions. Or maybe he had the same ones and wanted to crawl inside of me and hold my heart like I wanted to hold his. I could hear it pumping furiously under his shirt. I pressed a kiss to his neck where his pulse throbbed. He let out a low moan. I love you, Iris. I feel like I always have. This isn't going to go away. I nodded. I think I get it now. The love between us wasn't based on just one memory or a shared kiss. It was woven into our beings. We could no more deny it than we could deny there was a sun or an ocean or an elevator surrounding us. Be my woman. His hand pressed against my lower back, bringing our bodies flush. You're being bossy again, I flirted, feeling lighter than I had in a month. The reason I'd been unable to eat and miserable was because I was supposed to be with Reggie. We were two halves of a soul, and separating was painfully full of consequences. I'd thought he was my soulmate right after that first kiss. I wished I'd stuck to believing that, never doubting the witness I'd received that day. I could have saved us both so much sorrow. You like it when I'm bossy. His tone was husky and intimate. I bit my lip, grinning like a cat as I slipped my hands into his hair. And you like it when I kiss you first. I lifted on my toes and kissed him. Reggie wasn't one to sit on the sidelines, and he took control of the kiss, teasing my lips open and taking his sweet time reacquainting himself with my mouth. I gave him everything he asked for, my heart, my life, my soul. I was all his, and there was no going back. Epilogue. 6 months later. Reggie. I fussed with my tie. Gloria cleared her throat and gave me a stern look. I grinned cheekily at her and winked. She rolled her eyes in a way that said she was thankful she had raised a daughter. A moment later, she winked back before slipping down the aisle to find Iris. I glanced at the small chapel, located on the 4th floor of a building 2 blocks down from my apartment. Behind me was a beautiful stained glass window built into a false wall and lit up to look like sunlight was filtering through. In reality, it was raining in New York and the streets were a sloppy mess. The perfect day to get married. My side of the church was sparse. My 2 aunts on my mother's side had flown in. We'd spent days going through old photo albums and filling in my personal history. It was brilliant to hear about my mother. She was an amazing woman who'd married into the aristocracy and then left it without a backward glance. According to my aunts, we were quite happy in a flat, far away from my father and his expectations. Of course, I was still an earl. That was a little tricky, but I was working on handing the title to a cousin. These things took time. It didn't matter to me if I ever saw that side of my family tree again. I was happy with the family I had now, 2 aunts, a soon-to-be mother-in-law, and a wife who was my best friend and the woman of my dreams, all wrapped up in a beautiful package. The music started and I stood straighter, ready for my first glimpse of my bride. Zelda appeared first, doing her maid of honor walk proud. She gave me a discreet thumbs up before taking her place. Next came Gloria with Iris on her arm. We couldn't come up with anyone more appropriate to give Iris away than the woman who had stood by her and me throughout our rocky beginning and our courtship. Gloria was a rock star as far as we were both concerned. She'd taken me up on that offer for a genealogy research trip and was headed to Scotland tomorrow to look for her 5th great-grandmother's grave. So many thoughts rushed through my head as my eyes fell on Iris. Most of them were one word. Stunning. Love. Beautiful. Kind. Laughter. Hope. Soulmate. Babies. I wanted babies with this woman. I took her hands in mine, and when it was time to recite my vows, I didn't hesitate. My life literally began the day you kissed me. There's nothing before that. She smiled, dropping her chin just a bit as if being modest. It was all true. I hadn't been able to remember my past. Not for a lack of trying. We'd done everything we could think of, every cognitive therapy, every physical therapy, every herb, every medicine, everything. But none of it worked. I'd finally called it on the efforts and asked Iris to marry me. Because it was time to start looking forward instead of trying to look back. I hooked my finger under Iris's chin and lifted it so she could meet my gaze. And everything after has been more than I could hope for. You're the reason I'm still here, and if I spend every day of my life loving you, which I fully intend to do, then I'll be a lucky man. I pledge my heart, my mind, my fortune, and my time to you from here until forever. You were a rock for me when I was uncertain about myself, but I will never give you a reason to doubt me. Her eyes shone, and I could see that she never would doubt me again. I didn't have my memory back, but it didn't matter, because the memories I'd made since that fateful day were the kind to sustain a man over a lifetime. I couldn't believe that in a city this big, I'd found the love of my life twice. You may now kiss the bride. I took Iris by the waist and then spun and dipped her before covering her mouth with mine. She held on to me, returning my kiss with a fervor that stole my breath. Want to go back to my place? I whispered against her lips. We had a flight out tomorrow morning, going tropical and using every drop of her 2 weeks vacation for a honeymoon. But tonight, she'd officially move into our home. She giggled. I do. I spun us both to our feet and held on to her until she was steady. We hadn't planned a big reception or anything, and we had hosted a luncheon before the ceremony. We were officially married and on our own. Because of what we'd been through, I knew that together we could take on whatever life threw our way. If there was one thing I'd learned over the past year, it was that I could make my life whatever I wanted it to be, and Iris, and I had big plans. I lifted her hand and kissed the back of it. I love you, Iris Piper. She kissed me, thrilling me all the way to my toes. I love it when you kiss me first. She giggled. I know. We got lost in one another's arms, and the rest of the world faded away. No street sounds. No car horns. Just me, this amazing woman in my arms, and a whole lot of love to look forward to. You've been listening to One Great Elevator Kiss. Written by Lucy McConnell. Read by an AI-generated voice named Ava. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss a romance.